Live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Break the Rules live stream. We have two newcomers to the stream, never seen before. We have Eigenrobot and we have Stardust. Thank you so much, guys, for coming in. Really appreciate it. Love you guys, and I'm so happy that we have a robot here for the first time, Eigenrobot. And Stardust, you are not a robot. You are a lady with a very beautiful tiger in your profile, and you are a live streamer doing very similar things to what BTR is doing. By the way, there is a little bit of not echo going on and a little bit of noise. I wonder who it's from, so I'm going to mute one of you guys and see if that works. It is not that. It is maybe Eigenbot. It is not Eigenbot. Is it Geo? Let's see if it's Geo. It is Geo. There we go. Now we know. So Geo, there was a situation going on with your mic. Let's see what it is. We are going to work it out. Anyway, listen, everybody. The dimensional merge is at hand because a lot of people from the Twitch community, from I guess the more left-leaning Twitch community, and we're going to get into this as we get talking. I want there to be a merge with them and the audience of BTR, because I think for too long people have been segregated in their own bubbles, and it's time to pop these bubbles.
No.
Yes. Slava Ukraina. Slava Ukraina. It is happening. It is happening right now. It is happening right now, right here and right now. But anyway, I want to start this conversation off by first asking Eigenrobot, what is it like to be a real robot, a real-life robot? Technology's come a long way. And what brought you into this particular environment on Twitter? And we're going to get into Elon Musk later on, but first Eigenrobot and then Stardust. So go for it, my friend. And everybody subscribe. All the new people, subscribe right now. Anyway, go for it.
Yeah, man. Okay, being a robot is fantastic. There's occasional discrimination that does occur, usually when you're trying to sign up on a website, and you have to deny yourself, it's unpleasant. It's unpleasant to have to affirm that you are not a robot when you are. And but things like that aside, you probably know a robot in your real life, and you just never know. It doesn't come out. We're quite advanced. How did I come onto Twitter? How adult is this is this stream, would you say?
Extremely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was a grad student, and long story short, about a decade ago, I built the world's largest database about black markets, commercial black markets for sex. And I did this online, and I was, doing this for my thesis, and it wasn't a market I knew very much about, and I wanted to kind of get more information and develop some context for the data that I was looking at. So I signed up on Twitter and just started following a bunch of sex workers, and that's how my account started. True story. Go look at my tweets from like 2013.
Wow. What was the environment of these sex workers? And I don't want to get into Stardust, but what was the general vibe that you got from these sex workers, and how does it also translate to the kind of communities you're looking at right now?
Oh, very different. A lot of them were activists. It was sort of a, it was more of an activist space, basically, I think is the best way to describe it. It's illegal. And so they tended to organize around that, around their own safety, from police, from clients, whatever. And then, back then, I think more efforts for decriminalization or legalization, which subtle differences. They had strong opinions about which were optimal. Not sure how they're doing now. I've stopped paying so much attention to it, and it seems like the vibe has shifted far away from that. So.
And one comment over here from Matthew W. Speaking of which, everybody sneed your super chats over to BTR, and they're going to show up on the screen. It's a new month. It's May, so it's empty right now. We got to fill that up, so there would be a new king or queen of the super chat eventually. So the comment over here from Matthew is this the man responsible for ruining Backpage for us? So before I get to Stardust, can you confirm that?
No, I was not. I was very diligent about not stressing out the servers. Backpage got taken down because, God, I can't remember. I think they arrested the founders and CEOs, tossed them in. I don't know how far the prosecutions went. I think it was a total shit show. But there were attorneys general in some states who were very aggressive about trying to prosecute the owners of Backpage for various crimes, real and imagined. And police were actually against it because the guys running Backpage were also very cooperative with police. the compromise was something along the lines of like, look, okay, so people are going to advertise here, and that's fine. We would prefer they do it on Backpage, where it's a situation where the people running it are actually cooperating with police for cases of like minors being trafficked and that sort of thing. And then there are a couple of attorneys general who wanted to make a career out of taking down Backpage and fighting the trafficking epidemic, which way outside the scope of this stream, but like is maybe not as extant as people thought it was back in 2013, 2014. Anyway, long story short, it's not my fault. Blame the cops.
And would you consider yourself part of the, what would you call a rationalist, neo-rationalist community, less wrong? You come from that milieu, Eigen?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think there were a lot of people in the space that I'm in who came through the internet as rationalists at one point or another. I'm old, and I've been on the internet a lot longer than probably longer than Yudkowsky in some ways. But no, I mean, I moved through that space. I was moving adjacent spaces before rationalism came around. I was never part of the core rat community truly, and there was a large group, small in retrospect, called the post rationalists, who were, I think, most active from say 2014 through maybe 2016, 2017. And I was much more kind of up in their business than the rationalists proper. But it's kind of a larger group with a lot of overlap. And, I would say that I come out of that milieu.
Now, before I get to Stardust, I'm going to refresh my screen because apparently I turned into a ghost right now, and I'm going to tell everybody while I'm refreshing, subscribe. For the life of me, I need to plead to all the new people who are listening here that because we're doing this dimensional merge, you must subscribe. Subscribe to BTR right now. Anyway, we are back. Stardust. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and doing what you are doing right now. Oh, unmute yourself. And everybody subscribe.
Is my mic good, by the way, Lev? Or?
Yes. Good.
Thanks for having me. I'm Stardust. So I kind of started doing the Twitch politics thing after I saw other people like yelling on Discords, and I started joining random Discord calls and yelling at people. And eventually we moved on to like streaming it, and I was joining panels and yelling at people. So yeah, it just kind of took off like randomly. I didn't think I didn't expect it to really take off, but then I started panel hosting, and people seemed to like the kind of like rage moderation style. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can say is that I was just interested in politics and interested in kind of putting on a show. So.
Now, I want to dissect the circles that we're in a bit, which is why I think having Eigenrobot is great here, because Eigenrobot, being a robot, is very analytical, looking at these things a little bit from afar here. But before I get to Eigenrobot, I want to get Stardust's opinion. What happened with Counterpoints, great guest who is going to be returning later on, was kind of a revelation on his part when it came to the kind of conversations that Gio and the good doctor, Dr. Ben Braddock, had on that last stream. You remember, Gio. You remember what was going on there.
That stream with Counterpoints?
Well, there's a lot of different things, but the overall vibe was very different from the one that he says is on Twitch. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, something related to like Bantu and nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff. It was very, very, very interesting. But the overall vibe that he got was that this stuff would not really be within the mindset of a lot of the Twitch political streamers, and a lot of the political streamers on Twitch are actually very scared. According to him, I don't know if that's true or not. You could tell me more, Stardust, but they're very scared of having like a lot more right-leaning people who are, on more of this reactionary end. Like there are some people who definitely do come on. Like I know Lauren Southern, she comes on some of the streams, but at least according to Counterpoints, there is still this this separation between these two sides. So I don't know, Stardust, is Counterpoints right? Is he wrong? What do you think?
I think I think he's generally pretty right. There are a couple of different spheres within that. There's like the Twitch kind of more liberal sphere who don't really mind, talking to anybody, talking to conservatives, lefties, whatever. Generally I fall into that group. And then there are like far lefties who are also fine with talking to everybody. And then there are like super far lefties who seem to dislike having anybody right of them on the platform. So I'm basically considered a fascist to them. So, which is crazy. But some of them are afraid to talk to people more right leaning than them. Some of them think that if you allow one person on who's too far right, it's just going to turn into like a cesspool of Nazis, which is just like such a ridiculous thought. So yeah, I think he's definitely correct in that. And like especially with the amount of how loud those people are that oppose having anybody right of them on the platform, it can be hard for anybody else to kind of like get their say in. So.
Well, that's happening right now in terms of the Biden administration with this new so-called Ministry of Truth that he is propping up at the same time that Elon Musk took over Twitter. So this was the initial reason for the conversation, although because of the news, Gio, I'm sure like you're very happy with what's happened recently. We are going to get into that if it's okay with Eigenrobot. We would go into that as well towards the end.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
A controversial take is that I think in some ways they're kind of correct in the sense that it seems when you do have any unregulated space, it tends to drift more rightward. I don't know why. I mean, don't make any statements on that, but I think that Twitch viciously polices itself to the point where they'll kick off someone like Destiny. I think probably they're scared of that. The way that to open up the floodgates would be.
Well, I have a question for Eigenrobot in relation to that, Gio. Do you think that if the floodgates were opened, more people, like Gio said, would go towards the right, or do you think that less people would get into the fringes, both right or left, if there's more of an exchange of theoretically open dialogue, and there wouldn't be as much of what I think contributed a lot to the more extreme elements of the right gaining prominence, which, like that whole meme with the NPC on it, where the guy says, "You radicalized me," there is this idea of the left being the primary, like the corporate left being the primary driver of a lot of right-wing, ultra right-wing dissent. So I don't know, Eigenrobot, what do you think of that?
I don't know. I mean, like, okay, so I think that historically spaces have usually ended up being pretty right or pretty left, and but just by an organic process, right? I mean, like, just people being driven off in one direction or the other. And right now, you look at a place like Twitter, what certainly seemed to happen between 2016 when they started really clamping down on stuff and today is a lot of the people who are on the site specifically to antagonize blue checks ended up getting kicked off because they were extremely good at antagonizing blue checks. Blue checks are good for business.
They were.
And so now if that's loosened, will they come back? I mean, on Twitter, almost surely, because the blue checks are still there, regrettably. But, as far as like another platform, I don't know. It feels hard to apply lessons from one place to another. And there are a lot of ways this could swing. So I don't have a strong prediction.
Well, before we get into more of the predictions, do you think in general that people who are now in more of a reactionary circle, and you guys in the chat, by the way, feel free to let me know what you think of this as well. Do you think
they will?
They will. Do you think that people who were in this reactionary circle are in it for the most part because of this threat that they see from the left? Kind of like the idea that there wouldn't have been a Hitler if there wouldn't have been all of this rabid, dangerous communism going on in the Weimar Republic, that a lot of people sought Hitler to be the only way to stop it. Like, I'm curious what you think of that.
No, I don't know. I mean, it seems like people are mostly in politics because it's something to do, Like, same reason people, like, join bowling leagues or whatever. It's like, yeah, get together with the guys, like shoot the shit and like, dunk on some people and have a few beers, call it a night. I would say that like people in politics, that's 90% of it.
I see that as well, but if not for, I think, a lot of the antagonism going on from the corporate media, I don't think people would have as much venom towards the blue checks. In other words, like, it seems like that idea that we are above it all and we control the algorithm and we control you, that I think does drive people more towards an extreme right position or extreme left in certain circumstances. But Stardust, what do you think?
So regarding like the reactionary, I mean, I think I think Eigenrobot's probably right about that. I think people just hang out with groups that they hang out with because it's a social gathering. A lot of people will hang out with people who initially they think are different views of them, and as they get like closer and closer to those people, they end up like defending those beliefs and believing in them more. And yeah, it is something to do. It's kind of like for a lot of people, just like a team to be a part of, unfortunately. So yeah, I think it's definitely a lot like that.
But it's never really been quite as much as it is right now in the past. I don't want to be looking through rose-colored glasses, but it seems like back then, people had hobbies. People had other things that they did with the company of other people, and now everybody is incredibly politicized. I mean, as much as I support Ukraine, I also understand this thing. How do you say it, Gio? Like the current thing. I support the current thing.
Spectacle, current thing.
Yeah, the spectacle. Yeah, so there is this tendency for people to just climb on the spectacle. Partly, you're right, because they have nothing better to do. But also, how much of these people do you think, like if worst comes to worst, would be able to have any kind of revolutionary thoughts and be able to do something with it as opposed to just sitting down? Like, do you think we're at an age right now where we're not going to have any of these revolutions anymore? Everybody's just plugged in, like you said, friendship simulator, and we're not going to get anything more violent than maybe some LARPers coming in and, doing some rallies for fun, and that's it. I know, Eigenrobot and then Stardust.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just don't really see that much of it. You look at what happened in 2020, and that was, I don't think it was particularly organized, right? Like, it was basically swarm behavior, and that is something that can grow very quickly and be unpredictable. But it's not organized by any means, and I don't think there's a ton of staying power with that sort of thing. And I mean, like, do I actually believe anyone in the United States is organized like that? Nah, not really. I mean, if you want to talk about fascism, right? Like, go and look at the amount of organization and like deliberate structures that existed in Russia. That's Leninist, but fine. Like in Russia, in Germany, in Italy, whatever you like. I mean, these were huge organizations that had quite a lot of order and long-term planning, and there's just nothing like that in the United States. There's no mass membership groups like that would actually be able to carry out a revolution like that at all.
Well, there is the Met Gala. There are certain organizations out there where you get a lot of the PMCs, the what managerial class is that? The
professional.
Professional, thank you. You have the
professional.
The
Met Gala is just like it's just a social gathering, really. I don't see anything coming out of that. So
not the Met Gala itself, but more of the idea that the people who attend these kind of events, I mean, except for, I guess, like Elon Musk or something, that they do have the same mindset as far as the kind of future they want to live in. And the question always gets brought up of how more extreme would they go? Like, what is the thing that's driving a lot of these movements? And is there a certain point where they say, "Okay, guys, that's it. We're not going to go"?
I actually don't think that people attending the Met Gala have like common views. Like you see it like even down to like the Scientologists, like talking about leaving the room when Leah Remini is taking an award for something. Like all these people in attendance are people who like disagree with each other in show business quite often and on political and religious levels quite often.
That's interesting. I mean, I never really thought that everybody's thinking the exact same way, but there are still certain things that have been, at least until right now, reinforced.
I mean, if
right?
some of them are Scientologists, we know that some of them are Scientologists. We know that they don't think the same thing, right? They don't believe in like gay marriage. They don't believe in progressive values, things like that. And there are plenty of like even with that being said, like these are all like celebrities that have a lot of them have progressive values. You still see that Roe versus Wade being overturned, and I think that's evidence that even when the right isn't in power, they're still able to exert significant influence on the country.
Well, since you mentioned that, let's go into Roe versus Wade. And Gio, your thoughts on Roe versus Wade? Yeah,
I think the problem is like Eigen is correct in that there's a difference between the 20th century sort of style of millenarian politics, which has in some ways led to the politicization of all life, where politics is a team sport, politics becomes entertainment, politics becomes very much the mode of being as opposed to religiosity or culture or something else. But in the same way, it was different in that you had vanguard parties, you had mass movement organizations. But like, for example, you mentioned the Met Gala with, typical celebritards or whatever. I think that it's more of like they're a part and parcel of sort of compartmentalized entities within the PMC or whatever you want to call it, right? They are part of in other words, they're an integral part of the empire, but they're not really. They can have political dissent, but I think that it's different when you have an organization that functions as a social technology as opposed to a vanguard party or a movement. Like, I don't think that Hollywood in particular is part of a movement, but they're rather part of a network of systems. But that being said, like with Roe versus Wade, I think that what it is a culmination of one of the only effective and long-lasting organizational capacities on the political right, which is number one, abortion, number two, gun control, or lack of, against gun control. So I think it's really a development of a lot of forces, and it's really just come to a head off the back of literally work for the past 50 years since, was it 50 years since Roe versus Wade came about, 75? So I think that it's a rare exception on the political right, because it seems that when it comes to politics on the right, it's much more of like a decentralized, I would say, avant-garde, as opposed to like a quote-unquote movement. Because is like Greg Johnson in the same movement as Bronze Age pervert? No. Like, is it like you could say?
We asked this to counterpoints. I'm going to ask this to Stardust. Stardust, do you know who Bronze Age pervert is?
Mm-mm.
One more, Gio. There we go. So we're gonna have to explain.
I think like it's another thing too. I think it's the impossibility of policing. I mean, I think that maybe Stardust. I was gonna call you Stardust.
Well, no. There's a lot.
We should have Stardust on. Actually.
Yes,
but
there's a lot to break down here.
No, but I was gonna ask about the politics of Twitch, because on Twitter and sort of like the Twitter, Telegram, Chan culture, right? It's very much the impossibility of policing. I mean, I know that, for example, someone on this panel right now, Eigen, is viciously criticized by the right wing on Twitter, and almost ritually. And
that's why I brought him on.
But then at the same time, though, there are people that still manage to orbit. And I don't know if like I don't know if like...
You're saying the right is more tolerant than
No,
left.
I'm saying that the right is more tolerant, but I'm saying that there is less mechanisms of severity when it comes to trying to quote unquote police the borders, because we can't even police ourselves, frankly. I mean, that's
police the what? I'm sorry, the borders?
No, I mean like the borders of like the group of the discourse on the online right. It's a decentralized network. That's why I call it an avant-garde. It's really just like cults of personality upon each other. Let's face it.
If you're talking about the online right, I guess I wouldn't really relate that to like the Roe versus Wade. Just like I would never consider anybody on the online left like any way related to like real life policy, right? People on the online left and the online right and center or whatever, generally they're just doing more like culture war stuff, really, and they're more arguing about policies. But as far as like those policies getting passed, I don't think they have really any influence in that area. I think they have an influence on public opinion, but regardless of like when it comes down to policy, like that has to do with like who got out and voted, who elected their people, and that's pretty much it. As far as like the online right, I would say recently, after interacting with so much of the online right and so much of the online left, I think there's an equal amount of infighting on the online right as there is on the online left. They are fucking cannibalizing each other, and I am staying out of it.
Well, can you give us some examples?
Beardson, that was quite that was hilarious, actually. America First is a good example of a cannibalization, but that sorry. I cut you off.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, you've got like the Wignats and the Groypers who have some intersection, but then they also hate each other. Then you've got like the Christian nationalists who also are like who also dislike the Wignats for everything they stand for, and also dislike the Groypers for everything that they stand for. And yeah, like all of these groups are fighting with each other. And that's just on the far right. Then you've got like the moderate right who doesn't get along with like the far right. You got the moderate, like generally the moderate center, center right, center left, who generally get along with each other. And then you've got the far left who also just police all the different groups in the far left. So yeah.
Is there infighting on the far left though? Like
there is.
Vouch I don't know who.
Well, I mean, like definitely there's infighting on the far left. I feel like I experience that a lot. Where the far left on Twitch gets really mad at me and calls for like mass reporting of me. But
well, that does bring up a comment over here by Jay Enns, who says, and by the way, guys, super chat these comments as well. Need those super chats. Who says you can't get kicked out of the right. If you get kicked out of the left, you're automatically right. Stardust, do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. I think you can get kicked out of the right, and maybe you can be apolitical. Same thing with the left. You can go to like being an apolitical person, but I wouldn't say getting kicked out of the left makes you right. I think it just makes you a target, I guess, because you just don't believe in all the same things. So.
Well, Eigen, your experience with the online right hasn't been a good one, my friend.
No, I disagree. I mean, look, okay. So occasionally I've tweeted things that have led to people losing their shit at me. And like occasionally it's been unpleasant, but for the most part, like I like most people in the online right. And, like I've gone to some of their parties and it's been a good time. There are certain people who are more tiresome than others, but you find that in any group of people. I think that I don't know. I'm not sure if I really have a moral to that story. Like as far as actually getting kicked out of a group, I mean, like it does seem like there are not that many boundaries, and it does feel like the right's more porous in that sense, right? Like. And there is some kind of a more coordinated mechanism for, shunning people on the left. And I don't quite understand how that works, but it does seem like it's there.
But do you think that the sort of maybe let's abstract this a bit more than just political groups, but as someone who is in rationalist circles, so you talk a lot about group dynamics and game theory and so forth. And how has just the sort of the template of the current like web, what are we in, web 2.0, 3.0? I forget. 3.0. 3.0. How like the sort of centralization of discourse upon a few different platforms, how that sort of affects the sum total output of like discourse itself, or how people shape their own thoughts or interactions online. Like, have you noticed, is there a way to quantify it? In other words, although I eschew any quantification of anything, because I'm grug pilled. But is there a way to quantify how people are interacting now, as opposed to, say, the Usenet days or so, or the forum culture, Chan culture, Reddit culture? Reddit is not anonymous, but like
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's much different now. Like, okay, the centralization is one major thing, and that has had the effect of throwing just about everybody in any kind of given space together. Like, you look at something like Facebook where there are almost 3 billion monthly users. I mean, that's just straight up everybody. And, within these broader networks, there are little sub networks, little niches, different nodes. There's an entire field of, graphical analysis that looks at social graphs and is in fact able to, go and identify specific little subsections of a larger network. You've seen visualizations like this, surely, like the ones with the Twitter abbies that are all bundled up or spread out. And it's a lot of fun, statistically speaking, but the things in practical terms, moving away from the math side of it, the big things that have happened has been a concentration where everybody is going at once. And then the implementation of algorithms on top of that, right? So one thing that's been mentioned to me is that Twitter is actually very good at not only letting people curate their own networks, but also reinforcing those networks and showing other people in those networks content from people that are likely to be in that network themselves, causing the sort of generation of, lots of little sub communities. So, I mean, algorithms like both squish and spread out. But as far as downranking and stuff, I think top-down attempts to control content are not necessarily having any effect on the way the different communities are forming. I don't honestly think they're affecting discourse that much either, although, I mean, the mind of the normie is an eternal mystery. But yeah, it's much different. The other thing that is directly related to Web 1 or Web 2 in terms of the infrastructure that I think is pretty important is the fact that everybody has a smartphone. I mean, before 2007, 2008, the internet was still a relatively niche thing. Lots of people were on it, but there was pretty heavy selection into it. And for a lot of sites that were more social, you actually had to go out of your way to get there and actively participate. And now, I mean, the old may remember this idea of eternal September, where on the very old internet, every September, there was a wave of new users who came on with the new semester. Students going to school, suddenly they're participating in these forums, and they just did not understand the norms. And so September was understood to be this awful time in internet spaces because there were a ton of people who were just running wild, like, kids at a party and not participating well. And then, over the next year, they would acclimate and they would get used to internet norms and you would have peace again. But then in September, this happened again. And what happened in the 90s with America Online that brought a huge number of new users onto the web was what was then known as Eternal September. There was just this constant stream of people coming onto the internet who did not understand how what the existing culture was like, and they completely overran it. And it never really quite got back to the old days, but the early aughts were a pretty good time on the internet, all things considered. And what happened with smartphones is that suddenly really, really everybody got into
Hyper
the internet.
September.
Yeah.
And it was Eternal September all over again. So fuck you, Steve Jobs.
For 4chan, they have a similar term, but it's summer instead of September, I guess, because a lot of the kids who aren't in school anymore, they just go on 4chan, so that's what they consider to be the same
The summer thing, yeah.
Summer posting. But regarding more of the issues here of liberalism and turning away from it, there is a very nice thread that Eigen made, and I sent this to Stardust as well, where you say, I'm not part of the right, goes without saying. I'm not part of the right partly because I'm basically liberal in temperament and partly because I'm deeply skeptical of joining anything. There are other reasons as well. Liberals should consider open critiques of liberalism. So this last point, I think, is a very important one because the reason why I mentioned the Met Gala, it's not to say, Stardust, that there aren't Scientologists there and other people who would disagree, but Geo, in using terms like the empire, I think what he means by that is that there is still this overall consensus in, yes, there was this Roe versus Wade thing right now, but there is still in academia, in media, there's far more likelihood that they would join up with a lot of the Twitch politics people like Hassan, for instance. They would treat him better than they would treat somebody who goes against that narrative as far as media exposure, as far as things of that nature. And I think that does put classic liberals in a way in danger, because they're not really, like Eigen said, they're not really standing up for their principles. They're letting themselves be run over by much more leftist extremists. So I don't know, Eigenbot, is there anything that I'm missing here from this?
You like to go to wine bar and you enjoy tasteful banter. That's your problem. Oh.
I mean,
yes.
It really depends because a lot of these people that you're talking about were people who supported Hillary Clinton, who was like pretty moderate, not super far left. So people like Hassan, I think he's really more of like a socialist for the aesthetic. I don't think he's actually a socialist. I don't think he understands anything that he says, or he understands very little of what he says. And he understands significantly less now than he used to. So I don't know.
Incredible.
I think, well,
Oh, he
look,
said it. He said the word. Sorry, Stardust. Go ahead.
no, it's all good. So I don't know about like this like empire. But I mean, you guys were just talking about the early 2000s and what the internet was like then. I'm sure anybody who came onto the internet in the early 2000s who wasn't like a dude, right? Like if like a woman came onto the internet in the early 2000s, probably felt like this was an empire too. Does that make it an empire though?
Well, an empire in which sense? Because as far as the people who were heading up, I don't know, all the various educational institutions at the time, I don't think they were as, I wouldn't say conspiring, but they weren't as on board with things having to do with trans issues and things having to do with
the early
critical
2000s
race theory.
the early 2000s was very hostile to women and to minorities on the internet, like whether we want to like acknowledge it or not, right? And say what you will about like what it was like, right? Like it was a lot of edgy humor, which is fine. I'm very edgy myself, but to somebody who's like not used to that type of humor, somebody who's like not any of those categories, probably walking into that space was felt like they were walking into an empire that was working against them.
I
Right?
feel like I disagree to the extent that there were woman posters on the old days of the internet when anonymity was the main vector by which you could communicate. I feel that my good friend on Twitter, Impossible Princess, she talks about this, how there were women's spaces on the sort of old forum cultures, but they were much more confessional. They were very I guess the term is like femcel now, but like I mean, it seems that internet dynamics have changed with the advent of the smartphone being able to provide an easier way to quote unquote post face, and then in some ways the dynamic has shifted to where not just that women are like more welcomed on the internet, but rather the dynamics itself is sort of become so that like social media in particular is, I would say, coded towards the feminine in a lot of ways. In certain social media
Maybe.
sites, certainly.
I think the way that things like Twitter work, I mean, these are like private businesses at the end of the day, right? Like Facebook, Twitter, all of these like social media sites. So they're probably going to want to curate their user base a bit to what they think their company values look like. And if that means that they're if that means that they have TOS guidelines that are stricter on people who are like edgier, I guess that's what that means, right? I'm not like a huge fan of like censorship myself, but at the end of the day, like if there's like a private business that I walk into, and that business is like around like I don't know, selling baby clothes, and I'm in there and I'm yelling about how children suck, I hate children suck, they're probably not going to want me in their business, right? So
But then there's the question. Well, that's Glasscake. Who
One
says,
of the only women on Newgrounds was my friend Emily Yukis, and we all know what happened.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, but he says over here, let's see, let me scroll up. Glasscake says, "Who cares if Newgrounds and 4chan was bigoted in 2003? There was like 2 women on those sites back then."
I mean,
So-
I think that's the
one
point.
woman was based.
No, but here's the interesting thing. If we're talking about something as the default public square, the important question is, as far as rights go, do you give rights for people to kind of like negative rights and people being able to express whatever it is they feel, even though certain people may come offended from that, or do you take away the ability for people to speak so that a certain percentage of people will not be offended?
It depends on whether you view Twitter as a public square. So if you do view it as a public square, then sure, you're going to want to have like anybody say whatever they want. If you view it as like a business, you're trying to protect your like profits, right? And a significant amount, like a high percentage of your user base is female, or a high percentage of your user base are like marginalized people, you're probably going to make the sacrifice to cut off like, you know, this small percentage of people who are incredibly like saying incredibly edgy things, so you can maintain that larger user base that's making you money, right? It's just it comes down to money at the end of the day. I think
But
that's just
does
really
it
all
though?
it is. Yeah.
Here's the antithesis. I mean, now that Twitter was sold, you may be more right, but there was still, to give a little bit of pushback here, there was still a lot of pushback from Twitter to prevent it from being sold. There was that whole poison pill scenario. It almost seems like they didn't care initially as much of, you know, how much money can we make. It was more like, we want to do whatever it is in our power to secure this thing, to not give it to somebody who may misuse it, even though they could have made initially, and they ended up making a lot of money. Like, why the hesitation then? You see what I'm saying? Like, it almost seems like there is something there.
So that might be more of like a long-term investment versus like a short-term profit kind of thing, right? I can't really speak into the details of that and why that happened, because I don't really understand like everything around that. But I think we could just uh, kind of like probably look at what that poison pill was meant to do. If was it meant to maintain control over the platform, or was the poison pill meant to just drive profits up?
Well, even with the media reactions to it, it's very different from when Jeff Bezos, for example, bought Washington Post. There is an obvious bias as far as people who are in these.
Washington Post is different from Twitter. Washington Post is not like a public platform that anybody uses for like social media, right? The Washington Post is a journalistic organization, and you've got like a bunch of journalists working there, whereas Twitter is quite literally just anybody and their grandmother can join and post whatever they want.
It is a public, like it is a letter of records. I personally think the legacy thing is bullshit nowadays, because most media companies are terrible, but they still have a sort of aura around. It is the letter of record for literally the most, I mean, arguably, well, we'll see what happens in the coming decades, but the most important country in the world. I think that it does lend to a certain prestige, the way that the New York Times was bought by, was it Carlos Slim Lev, or who was it?
Yeah, I think so. Not so
He
slim,
doesn't
by
own
the
it
way.
now, does he? Does he still own it?
Ironically,
Yeah.
I think so. But
It's so
Eigen,
slim, yeah.
Eigen, what do you think of that situation, though? Do you think that there were so many attempts made when Elon originally proposed buying Twitter to prevent him from buying Twitter because of money? Or do you think that there is this underlying ideological component going on here, where they are afraid that the narrative, the conversation is going to change, and they're not going to be able to suppress certain things that, let's face it, like with the Hunter Biden situation, with that laptop, that was suppressed by Twitter. There were other shadow bans that were made. So there's definitely something going on here beyond money, in my opinion. But I don't know, Eigen, what do you think?
Oh, sure. I mean, like, you know, whenever corporations are potentially going to be taken over, there's often quite a lot of resistance from existing management. And I mean, like, you know, I don't know that you need to necessarily fall back on a story about, you know, some kind of conspiracy to control the flow of information. Although you could, and like, I don't think that's a crazy idea. But I mean, you know, the way that Elon is talking about it, he would be firing everybody on the board and paying them zero. And, you know, a lot of management will probably get the axe. And so I think they were probably pretty highly motivated just by financial and status concerns to resist some kind of a takeover. I think you don't even need to rely on a story like that, though, because the fact of the matter is, as far as making money, at the intersection of making money and considering how to set terms of use for platforms, you know, an uncomfortable reality is that while the government may not regulate speech directly, it does have quite a lot of power over other aspects of how firms are regulated. Partly as a consequence of Wickard v. Filburn, worst Supreme Court decision in history. Look it up. Wickard v. Filburn. Hate it. That's my shilling for this episode. Anyway, the moral of the story is, like, government has many ways in which they can regulate. And frankly, you know, if they want to regulate speech on a given platform, they don't need to just say, you need to do this on your platform. I think it's probably quite enough to implicitly suggest that regulations are going to happen. and maybe hint that it's, partly because there's some bad action that's occurring on the platform. It doesn't need to be direct at all. They can just change the terms of 230 via legislative act, possibly even by executive action, and then platforms are in deep shit. So, to a sense, I think you can rely on relatively indirect, but probably still pretty powerful incentivization of platforms to, coerce speech to occur within some limited set of bounds, and still have that be a matter of, and have that be a matter of something that is making financial sense for a given firm in that regulatory context, and yet, not being something the company would necessarily do in the absence of that, or, to make money in the absence of that. You know what I'm saying? It's like shaping the financial incentives of a firm rather than,
Well, two things, Eigen. One would be if I think that if they were to make it so that social media sites are essentially like journalist organizations, and every poster is a quote unquote content creator that has certain editorial responsibilities, that would be a fucking disaster. That would be the death of all discourse. It would be worse than Twitch. So do you think they could possibly go down that route? And also, I want you to maybe comment, being the oldest of old hats here, oldest of old F slurs, as they say, about the sort of early experiences of women on the internet. I do think that Stardust has a fair point, though. I mean, the early internet very much was a male space, but a particular kind of male space, I think, and not. I don't think the chuds were on the internet yet. So it was more of like the sort of the nerd sogyny, I believe Jezebel called it back in the day. But so maybe you could comment on that, but also the sort of content moderation thing, if they were to turn it into quote unquote journalist organizations where, if Cum Graper 1488 was posting gamer words on Twitter, he would automatically be a quote unquote content creator. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as the old internet is concerned, I think that's right. Like, it's maybe a little bit hard to convey what spaces that existed around nerds were like in the 90s, and to a lesser extent in the early aughts. I mean, they were pretty toxic in exactly the ways you describe. They weren't exclusive. I don't think they were actively exclusive of women, or kind of creedally misogynistic, right? Like it was just like people went in there and happened to be like that. It wasn't like a deliberate agenda that was set out. There were a number of women in early gaming and internet who actually were pretty prominent, like a woman whose name I forget, huge in history.
Morgan Webb. No, I'm kidding.
Huge in the history of gaming. She co-founded Sierra Online, did all of the King's Quest games, which, I mean, if you ever played old adventure games, you probably know what those are. And she was very successful, very involved in everything in the industry for quite a long time before she retired in the late 90s. And the thing was, like, women like that tended to be, I mean, they were relatively weird and I think unusual among women, and I think maybe better able to operate in a space like that. But yeah, I mean, that was all real.
But then what are the trade-offs, both Stardust and Eigen, you'd say, with having the internet be now a little more like Geo, if you agree with him, more targeted towards the female demographic? There is an interesting quote, which one of the people, I think Michael, put in the chat. There's no such thing as women on the internet. Now, that was an old 4chan thing, but what that means, from what I understand, is that it's not like there aren't women, but when you're on an anonymous board, like 4chan, for instance, it doesn't really matter as much whether or not you're a woman, because people don't see you, so people are just going to judge you unless you're posting pictures. People are going to judge you according to what you say. So that does play a certain role in the dynamics there. But I don't know, like, what would you say is the potential, possibly downsides, or if not downsides, transformations that have occurred and will still be occurring with this shift of who the focus is on? Or you disagree that there is like more of a female focus, like Gio said? So I don't know, Stardust, you could start this up.
I do want to say, like, Egan made a good point that, like, it wasn't necessarily like targeted to be like misogynistic, right? It just happened to be, right? And it could it not be the same thing now, right? Where it's not specifically targeting a female demographic. It's just that more females are using a certain platform, so it just happens to naturally be in a way that it's catering to that larger audience.
Do you feel that Twitch, though, in particular, seemingly shaping, I guess, Zoomer politics, which is quite terrifying? It's in some ways like anti.
I thought we were talking about Twitter, though.
Oh, we are talking about Twitter.
Yeah. So Twitch, I would
yeah.
not say. Yeah, Twitch is more like when I talk about like you're talking about like this being like targeted towards a female audience. Twitch is not one of those platforms. I would say that Twitter definitely there's like a significant female audience, and it just happens to naturally, because of the large female audience on there, cater to that audience. It just makes sense like that. Just like in the early 2000s, the internet in general didn't really cater to a female audience.
No, but what I mean is in terms of moderation, it seems that there's like immense like double standards and like people that know each other, and it's very much like.
So how do you what double standards would you say?
Like there has been certain like female creators on Twitch, or certain like creators that fit a certain narrative that are not necessarily female, that tend to like get away with murder, and like and other people are like our good friend Steve Bonnell is sort of like kicked off right away, and now he's forced into the ghetto of Cozy TV. So it's like I don't know. It seems we were talking to our good friend Noah Hugbox about this, about how certain creators, I think, because they know the moderation team or they know people that are prominent within Twitch, they can sort of like get away with more, or like I mean
that might be the case, but Hassan gets away with stuff all the time, and Hassan is a male, right?
No, yeah, that's what I mean though. Not just women, but I mean, like Twitch is weird because it has
the top
like
10 creators are all males, by the way.
Top 10. I don't think Gio's point was that it's all women. I think the point was that there is a certain aristocracy that is welcome.
Like, it's weird to me, like from an outside observer, because I don't go on Twitch. Like, it's like it does have like a certain degree of far left politics, but at the same time, you have like what I would even perceive as like female objectification.
But you were initially just saying like it was about women, and now you're saying no, it's not about women. So,
no, I wasn't
which is it?
I was just saying that certain creators, men and women. I mean, I misspoke. I mean, it's what I mean is like there are certain women certainly who have gotten away with a lot on Twitch. There's certain men who have gotten away, but I think it's very interesting how you have a platform that is sort of coded towards the far left, but at the same time have like boob streamers that are like very objectified towards.
I don't know. I think that you're right in that Twitch is very inconsistent in the way that it enforces its rules. I can agree with that. But as far as like how they enforce on males versus females, I think it seems to be pretty across the board. It seems to be pretty consistent. I think dudes can get away with being shirtless on stream if they wanted to as well. And so and that's actually something that women probably couldn't get away with. But that's besides the point. Twitch politics being left and certain people like coordinating massive like reporting brigades has nothing to do with the platform itself and their enforcement. The enforcement, I think, is we can look at it and say it's inconsistent, and we can say that like it's got a lot of flaws, but I wouldn't say that it's tilted one way politically. I would say it's more that it's about like the power of the people who are most popular on the platform, and those people just happen to be people like Hassan, people like Keffels.
Would it be fair to say that when you have a platform that's oriented more towards male standards, there would be less things you would have to mind? You'd have to mind less P's and Q's, while on the other hand, if you have a platform...
Twitch is so I'm going to disagree with you. I think Twitch is very accommodating to the male audience. The male audience is the majority of the audience. My audience on Twitch is majority male. So majority of like the people on Twitch are male. They are going to be catering to that male audience. That's how they make their money. So I don't think that we would see much difference in Twitch. I think just Twitch's management is very inconsistent on how they enforce their rules.
But catering on what though? Because if you're talking about when it comes to boobs, things of that, booba, things of that nature, that's I would agree with you there.
But even
as
just
far
like
as
social relationships.
well, yeah, as far as certain things that you are not allowed to talk about as much. For example, I don't know, migrants, for example,
if you were to start talking
theory.
about race and IQ,
we talk about immigration. We've talked about talked about various political things. If you start getting into like straight up peddling misinformation, like infrared, then yeah, you're gonna run into a problem.
Oh, come on, that was bullshit. I mean, hey, listen, I don't agree with
He was watching Russia today. He was sitting there watching Russia today.
Oh,
And on all of it as fact.
Oh, that's not compared to the Western. Never mind.
No, Gio. You opened this can of worms. I'm going to get into that as well. I remember that. But okay, I understand your point that these things are discussed. As far as, let's say, I don't know, trans issues, for example, it seems to me like on Twitch,
yes, there are quite a few trans creators on Twitch who are very popular, and have a lot of like group power, and I think that more has to do with that fact that they're very popular and they're able to coordinate with each other and their groups in getting somebody mass reported. I think that has so much more to do with that than Twitch as a platform. Like Twitch wants to be inclusive, obviously, because that's like part of their brand. But as far as like the talking about trans issues and the repercussions of talking about trans issues in a certain way, yes, there is something there 100%. But again, that more has to do with like the popular creators and them like deciding to tell everybody to mass report somebody. So
but then they also have like pull within Twitch. I mean, didn't Keffels basically destroy Destiny's career on Twitch, more or less? I mean, that was
that's exactly what I said, though. I like that's not contrary to what I said. She's very popular, right? She's become very popular. Her views are very popular, and so her being able to get a bunch of like far left people on Twitch who are also very popular on Twitch to coordinate and mass report somebody, that doesn't contradict anything that I've just said.
So the picture that I'm getting right now, Stardust, is that other than the situation with trans people acting in this particular way, grouping together in order to take down the creator that would badmouth certain trans issues, it seems like a lot of these communities naturally form just from the people that are already there, as opposed to any concentrated conspiracy to get people to think certain. Okay, that's interesting. I tend to agree with that assessment as well, but at the same time, something still irks me just about this whole environment. I'm not sure how exactly to put it into words, but like that phrase Gio just said right now, empire, that is still something that I want to get a little bit more into. Like, Gio, when you say empire, what exactly do you mean by that? Can you draw it out?
It's hard to describe because I think that in some ways, I mean, it's very simple to have just like an easy like thing, like, well, our good friend Curtis Yarvin saying like, well, it's the cathedral. It's in some ways, yes.
Wait, Stardust, have you heard of that term, the cathedral? Mm-mm. All right, Gio, go for it.
Oh man, okay. So this is Molebug's idea. Curtis Yarvin's idea is that there are certain networks of power that, at the same time, and again, I think his big problem is that he actually doesn't read various French philosophers. That's his flaw. He's very coming from a very much Anglo-empirical legalist interpretation. But he believes that the reason why certain institutions, call it the professional managerial class, why most people, not out of a sense of conspiracy, but out of a sense of coordination, how they tend to have similar worldviews and similar ways of doing things. He believes it's because it's sort of like a neo-religiosity where the university in particular becomes like a in the Islamic world they call them madrasas. Here us Christians call them seminaries. And so the university system itself informs the doctrine that other institutions and networks of power follow through on. So he comes up with this term, the cathedral, but I think there's problems with it because it's very like a lot of people on the far right, they sort of have become accustomed to criticizing Curtis now, which I am a critic of him as well in some ways, where they say that, well, they're not naming the real source of the problem, whatever that source of the problem is. I guess we can have some ideas about what certain people on the far right believe to be the source of the real problem. But
Yeah,
but I
Eigen
think
also
that
talked about that. How
the idea
that's-
is to sort of wrap. It's a way of like wrapping your head around how various institutions, the people within them, can believe similar things over time as a product of discourse, rather than like a conspiracy of like, well, the Bilderberg Group or the Lev's people control everything or whatever. Like, I think that's a big problem in terms of like how you approach system theories of power, is like, how do these people, because it does seem true that like most people in most high-end institutions believe somewhat similar things, even though they do have political disagreements and there is a lot of infighting. But why is it that they have the same view of how to approach the rulership of like
Was this just the
majority of the
JQ?
world? No,
I
Curtis
would be.
himself
I,
is a,
yeah.
I don't know. Sounds a little bit like the JQ, guys.
No,
So Stardust. Oh wait,
No,
Eigen,
but the
you wanted
JQ
to.
is why the far right criticizes Curtis Yarvin, because he doesn't. Well, he's
Okay,
one of
no, I gotta
That's why,
as being a fellow small hat tribes person over here in the flesh.
Oh,
I
God.
gotta speak out about this. So among the far right people, there's been time and time again, pointing towards me and saying a lot of things that nobody would appreciate, but I've grown a really thick skin towards. That being said, when it comes to analyzing patterns that people adopt in universities, be they, people from Norway or Sweden or Germany or wherever, there does seem to be particular patterns that people go into regardless of whatever their religion is, whatever their ethnicity is. So I don't like it when people would hold something like my genetic origins as this shield to prevent any kind of discussion about this problem if it is a problem. So that's why I want to make sure that we differentiate the accusations that people have towards the Jewish people that I am a part of, which are absolutely stupid, ridiculous, and Eigen agrees with me on that. These are things that I've been fighting against for a long time on the stream, while at the same time being able to talk about these power dynamics that naturally occur over time when people are within media, academia, and so on. Do you see what I mean? I hope I'm being a little clearer here. Stardust.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So people have like more influence over like media and universities, but they don't happen to be Jewish. That's basically what you're saying, is that they don't have to be Jewish. But
they happen to go to the same institutions. They make friends with other people who are within those institutions, and those, I would say, the Jewish people who are part of those groups happen to, in my experience at least, be self-hating Jews. They happen to be people that completely disregard a lot of the religious Jews. They happen to be people that are very anti-Israel. That's what I find as well. So that's just my own personal view.
That's what Yarvin is saying. I mean, Yarvin himself is Jewish, and he says that it's not a matter of a conspiracy. It's rather that certain ideas get informed by people participating in certain institutions, and they go to like the same elite universities and so forth. And keep in mind that Yarvin himself, I mean, I'm not a big subscriber of that idea. I think that there's problems with his analysis, but I do think, like nowadays especially, a lot of people on the far right specifically criticize him because he doesn't name them.
Yeah.
If you will.
No, but again, these people are degenerates who think that
Oh,
anyway.
Lev,
But
you're
no, they
insulting our
are.
audience
But
right now.
I don't care.
Degenerates. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So who are the degenerates? The ones in power?
The anti-Semites are the degenerates. Those are who the degenerates are. And the people who are in power, the people who are in power today are useful idiots, in my opinion. They're propagating things that they have no idea how harmful they really are. Because these are the people who are causing, I think, a lot of distrust among each other, a lot of division online when they preach a lot of, again, like all the CRT stuff, all that shit. But anyway, Eigen, do you agree with the assessment that Geo has made right now about the cathedral? Because I want to make sure Stardust understands what exactly we're talking about here, and that the wrong idea is not really does not really come up. So.
Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff to say. The first thing is that it's, I think most people when they talk about this idea of kind of a like elite monoculture with specifically a kind of tight or a set of almost choreographed beliefs, is that it's an older idea than that. I mean, a classic case of this is going back and looking at Chomsky, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Also like
Chomsky honk.
also notably Jewish. Like, and while it is true that certainly a lot of theories about like a conspiracy of this type do involve Jews, I don't think that they're necessary to any sort of a set of ideas about the existence of constraints on speech and the set of ideas over which people can the set of ideas that people can espouse and still exist in certain relatively rarefied spaces where they have disproportionate control over discourse. As far as like where do I fall in this, I think the idea of an active conspiracy gives people way too much credit, and I think that things are. I mean, it's just way too large of a space. There are thousands of colleges
Yeah.
and universities in the United States, right?
Mhm.
And locking everybody out of these spaces, like there's no committee to do this. What I think is probably more realistic, and I promised people that I would use words like this. So, consider the idea of an egregore, right? You can imagine just like this. I mean, these sorts of things, to the extent that they exist, I think it is real, and it is more true now than it used to be. Incidentally, the way that universities operate now is really quite a lot different than they did in the 90s and in the aughts. And I felt the changes happening when I was there throughout my time in the aughts and early teens. But, basically, like, there's a set of things that you can write about without criticism and indeed with, be rewarded for it. And there are certain things that you can write about that will maybe get people making quiet, disapproving noises. And you can just kind of tell that you're not quite fitting in this very subtle way, and everybody just kind of absorbs these norms. They don't necessarily talk about them out loud, but they're there. And I think I've got a lot of feelings about this. I think that generally for universities and places like media in particular, the set of views that you can't really have without being either low-key shunned or outright kind of forced out really reduces the value of those sorts of institutions as, and here I use the term truth loosely, but like truth-seeking or truth-generating organizations, like their value in that sense for meanings of truth that I think are useful and interesting, really declines in proportion to the extent to which those kinds of ideological soft controls are in place. So yeah, I mean, I think I think people are pretty indelicate in the way that they talk about this and think about this, but I think that about most things that people think about. But at the same time, like I think that it is real, and there are institutional ways that it's propagated, and there are social ways that it's propagated, but it's out there, and I think the trend, and there's always going to be some of this, right? Like there are just going to be certain people who you don't want in your space. Like if somebody showed up to your office and like spent his entire time talking about how cannibalism was great, actually, probably his career is not going to be
Probably
one for the world.
member of the Agori.
Actually.
Yeah.
Probably one of the Agori tribes, if you guys know that reference.
Oh.
Yeah.
But so it's really a question of like how much is tolerated and how do people react to it. And I think I think that space, at least certainly subjectively, has been shrinking, although I maybe think we're past the apex of that.
Well,
Well,
wait, hold on a second. Before we go further, I want to make sure Stardust. I think Eigen was very
articulate.
very articulate, much more than me. Very articulate in how he was able to describe what people refer to as the cathedral. Before we go further, Stardust, do you have any questions or comments on that particular term?
No. I think that people who get into power just I don't know, they just tend to kind of like converge on common ideas. I don't think it's like a Like, I don't think there has to be any agency or coordination to it. I think it's just something that happens naturally. I mean, you can look at like cross-culturally universities, like in different countries, right? They'll converge on certain facts. So
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what we were talking about. So I'm glad that
I think
yeah.
my problem is with Curtis Yarvin is that what I mean by he should read French theory, sorry, is that for example, like Michel Foucault, I know he's like so hated on the political right for obvious reasons, but I mean, when I did my MA in the university, that was my main topic was Michel Foucault, and I think that you can explain it through the regime of truth, power, knowledge. Like these are very good concepts, I think, that can sort of fill in the gaps because Curtis Yarvin comes out of like a very much Anglo legalist framework. People then also other people within Anglo sociology, like James Burnham, for instance, or like de Juvenal, like certain elite theorists, like that come from Italy and England.
James Burnham, that was the author of the Machiavellians, right?
The Machiavellians, the Managerial Revolution, the Suicide of the West. Yes. Academic Agent actually has a new book out where he talks about a lot of these theorists. I think it's called Problem of Power or something. I don't know. Maybe we should get Academic Agent on one.
But here's a very interesting question, I think. How does this kind of group of people who, like we said before, it's not coordinated, but naturally these mindsets end up occurring, how does that then trickle down to the masses? Because like Stardust was saying, and I tend to agree with her here, a lot of these relationships that people form online, I don't think it's manipulated. I think it's very natural. But there is another issue here that comes up for me at least, where much like certain authors, for example, Vladimir Nabokov, in writing his book Ada, or Ada, and how to pronounce it, he made it very difficult for people to get into that book from the first several chapters. And I think there is this tendency there of authors to make it hard, like put a wall up, so that it's going to be a lot harder for people to climb to that, through that wall and enjoy the content, because that kind of gatekeeping basically keeps all the stupid people out. And I'm not saying that this is the case, but what if a lot of the problems that we're going to be experiencing is because a lot of stupid people have access to the internet, while in the old days there used to be a certain process you had to go through to even connect to the internet, and whether that is going to create some kind of a dystopian situation in society, because now you have all these stupid people with their stupid ideas screwing everything up. I don't know. Eigenrobot.
Are you endorsing the idea of the IQ shredder now? Is that what you're endorsing?
I'm not saying anything. I'm asking Eigenbot this question. So what do
you think? Are you a secret Landite, Lev? Are you a Nick Land fan?
I've never read Nick Land yet, but hopefully he should come in. But I don't know, Eigenrobot, do you agree with that assessment, since you were on the internet for a long time, that it has gotten stupider, and the stupidity, at least I see stupidity as being very dangerous? Because if you have somebody who is in charge of something and is smart, they're probably not going to do as much evil as somebody who is stupid, which is why I think Putin is very stupid. But anyway, Eigenrobot, go for it.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess I have a very different take on things. Are you familiar with forget that guy's name? There was a famous German general, most famous for what I'm about to describe. Actually, I'm not sure what his conduct was in World War I, but he had a set of, no, it wasn't Ludendorff. He was somebody in the Imperial Luftwaffe. But he was most famous for having a taxonomy of officers. And in particular, he identified officers as being either clever or slow, and either diligent or lazy. And his caution in particular was about people who were diligent, but nevertheless, foolish. And he thought these were a minority. He thought most people were both lazy and slow, and they could just deal with relatively rote stuff. But then this issue came. Okay, so like maybe if you're lazy and clever, you should be put out commanding troops in the field, because while you're lazy, like you are also able to make decisions quickly somehow. But then the real risk was that somebody would be both diligent and foolish and end up in power. But I don't know. I think I personally identify as very stupid myself. And
No, that's like the hot girl saying that, oh, I was such a nerd
I'm
in
not
school.
great
I was the
today.
no. But like really, like if you're like going out and identifying as smart, I think that
Oh,
like
yeah.
like here I would think about like Jason Stanley in particular, right? Like his
Yeah.
entire identity is based around like this idea that he has to be this very clever person. And I mean, not
Yeah.
only does that become exhausting, but I think it also really distorts how you think about things. You end up being dumber for thinking about yourself as smart. But no, I mean, like as far as what's happening with the internet and low information people, there's another interesting thing, which is if you go to certain very very poor countries, what you tend to see is, and like you go through a rural area, there's a lot of poverty out there, but it's not necessarily visible. It's not centralized like it might be in a city where you see people on the street who look very badly off, very poor, or you go through a rundown neighborhood with houses that are falling apart in a gray and grim way. But I mean, I think that before the internet, if you were to just go out and look at what people were concerned about, like I think you would find people even lower information than they are today. It was just all very local, right? Like people before people
But
did not.
that's kind of my point, though, because it's local. It's not going to have as virulent of an effect to get into other people's heads.
Yeah, maybe. So I mean, like a major risk is like maybe a lot of people like become more easily manipulable through the internet. But I don't think that it's obvious. I don't think it's obvious to me that that's any worse than what was happening when everybody got all of their information from TV 40 or 50 years ago. And I mean, like that was pretty dangerous too in a lot of ways. Like old zombie movies. The entire point of the zombie movies is that like it's these people who have totally given up on cognition and like independent thought, and they're just kind of following it and following.
Well, to counter that a bit, if we look at, for example, Walt Disney making Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Walt Disney intentionally made that movie to appeal to, at the time, the housewife, because he knew that the wife was going to grab the kids and the husband and go watch the movie, so you're getting a lot of people watching it at once. My thing here with talking about the stupid people, and again, I think it's relative, but I don't want a situation where the politicians, I mean, I guess this is kind of like an age-old thing where, the demagogues appealing to the lowest common denominators, but especially with the internet, are we going to see even more of that, where you're going to have people appealing to these very base emotions in order to get elected, in order to have power over
That's a reality
people?
time itself, though.
But does
I
the
hate to
internet
say,
make
but
it
Trump
any...
was the master of that.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
the best speech ever was the snake one. That was amazing. That was like, and you should, the line he said at the very end, the way he delivered it was, and you shut up, silly woman. And you should have known, I said with a vicious grin, you should have known I was a snake when you let me in. And the whole crowd would like, it was literally like going to a metal concert, just like boom.
But with that situation though, do you think that it is something that's going to get worse eventually? Like, I want to ask Stardust to start off here. Is there a similar thing you see happening in the future that may be happening right now with this, as I call it, stupidity of the masses being used to manipulate people even more?
So if you're concerned about, I guess, the stupidity of the masses, do you think that leads to like a requirement for like something like that disinformation board we were going to talk about?
That's an interesting question. I would say no, because with the disinformation board, that basically gatekeeps all the stupid people within all their stupid talking points. That way only the stupid talking points are the ones that are going to be allowed to be active if there is a situation where these politicians depend on a lot of people being stupid. I'll give you Russia as an example.
You don't think the amplification of low information voices is something that we should manage as a society?
No, I don't. And I'll give you Russia as an example. So in Russia right now, they have the, and you're going to love this, Gio, they have the Russian TV stations that are pretty much all propaganda, and they are geared to pleasing only one person, that is Putin. So all the, let's say, older generations of Russians only have that as a source. They don't have anybody who would come in and give them an alternative. And that keeps them stuck in this, very stupid mentality of believing all these lies. at least if we open up the floodgates, there's going to be, people out there like, I don't know, like Styx, for example. I don't agree with everything that Styx, Hex, and Hammer 666 says, but there are still people out there who come in that are able to challenge certain things that people believe in. At least those who are curious enough will be able to seek it out. While unfortunately, I think that it is in the interest of people who have, certain positions of power to always have people that depend on them. And if you want somebody to depend on you,
Brian
you're going to have...
is on CNN, Lev. I can't, say what you want about Russia Today or Channel 1 or whatever.
That's not good either. The Brian Stelter,
But don't the oligarchs in Russia do the same thing? Like, they limit the messages that are able to get out, right?
Absolutely,
so, yeah, that's great.
So...
Ignore him.
Go ahead, Stardust.
No, it's all good. I guess I'm just trying to understand what your idea is to do with society with this problem then of information and different qualities of information.
Well, I'll give you an example. One of the things that could be done is if there is some think tank person out there who has a, let's say, more mainstream take on the Russia situation, instead of censoring people like Russians with attitude or whatever, what you should do is you should organize an event where you bring in all of these people and just spend hours and hours going through whatever it is they have to say, completely annihilate their worldview, which is based on lies, and just have like a best of reel where you show how embarrassing these people are for spouting all of these lies. Instead, that's what I would do.
RWA on BTR?
I would when I have a competent person on the other side. But you see what I mean, Stardust? That would be my solution to this problem of misinformation. Investing time and money and resources into countering things by actually inviting people who talk about a lot of this stuff on. And if they don't want to come on, then they're the ones who don't want to come on.
Sure.
They're the ones who are scared.
But do you think the average person in like society, the average working person, has the time to be like going through all that information and sifting through what is reliable information and what's not reliable information?
Well, I think we have to be very spicy with the way these things are done. It has to be very viral. It can't be somebody who is just some bookworm, some nerd who is doing it. It has to be like Jim, for example. If we can get like Mr. Medicor to, just like he did with Fuentes, to sit down and to break down all these things that people are talking about with Russia and whatever. Like, the more we have of that, the more people are going to want to tune in, as long as you don't, censor the opposition. I mean, already right now, the biggest concern here is that you have this mindset that you've had in 2020 where when there's something that definitely looks like a riot going on, you have people on CNN saying that this is a peaceful protest. People see through that shit who are paying attention, and as a result, they're not going to have any trust for whatever it is the media says. I'm in the situation right now where, you remember my shirt, the Ukraine shirt? I'm in the situation right now where I definitely think the mainstream media is right in their assessment of Russia and their assessment of Ukraine. But at the same time, I think they're very wrong with a lot of other things.
How come they don't report casualty numbers, Lev? How come they don't do that?
We're going to have another Ukraine stream. Don't worry about it.
Oh, God, please,
but anyway,
no. Anyways.
Yes, please, yes.
Go to Eigen, because people are complaining that we're not talking about Twitter. But before we go back to Twitter and get Stardust's take on Twitter, Twitter, as Bronze's who I know, Lev, you probably, you think that BAP is also a... Russia shell.
Well, no, I don't know about him. Russia shell. I think he's pretty fascistic, but that's a separate thing.
Well,
but wait, hold on, Gio. Before that, I want to get Stardust's opinion on what I just said right now. Would that kind of model of preventing censorship, would it work in your opinion, or do you see a better one? I want to make sure we don't leave on that.
I mean, I guess it could be. I guess I would say, like, I would look again at the average, like, working person, the average working class person. They generally don't have time to be sifting through that information, even if it's like a TV program where you're talking about having all these different people with different views coming on and duking it out. Generally, like, they don't have the time to really, like, fact check that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's important to keep that in mind. And I think it's important to keep in mind that how exhausting actually going through that process is. If you've ever gone through that process, with somebody, where you're sifting through everything that they're saying and fact checking everything that they're saying. It's a very exhausting process. And if somebody's working like 10, 12 hours a day, they're just not going to be able to do that. So,
But then, oh, Eigen, go on.
Yeah, I don't know. I think probably it's best to just give up on people believing things that are true. Like if
I agree.
even in a very narrow space, it's extremely difficult to identify like what's true at all. Like even to the extent where it's possible to know it, right? Like I don't know. I spent a lot of time like in my life trying to do this both, you know, in school and professionally, and like even in very narrow spaces, trying to come up with some legible story about what's true in any given circumstance is very difficult. And you can do better and you can try to get closer to something that you believe is true. But, you know, political spaces in particular are what I would think of as a maximally hostile information environment, where almost all the information that you're getting is second or third hand. Almost everyone has an agenda. And so, you know, you're talking about low information people being easily manipulated. And while that's true, like, you know, we are not immune to propaganda and frame control and manipulation. Comic. Yeah, very much. And so, I mean, like, I don't think that, you know, I don't know that this is necessarily a good framing for it. Like, misinformation is just going to happen. I certainly propagate it myself very deliberately, and I hope it's hermetic rather than, you know, actively harmful.
Propagating misinformation is in itself like an aesthetics of, it's like a literary art form.
Yeah. But especially when we're looking at the faces of the people on CNN, for example, we expect these people to be the fact checkers. Are you kidding me? Like, that's the problem, again, with like the Hunter Biden laptop story. That one was suppressed. People were saying that this is fake news. So what do we do about that? Why should we trust these? Yeah. Well, this is exactly why, Gio, when it comes to certain things that come out of the media, even if I agree with them on Ukraine, I grant that they are the classic case of the boy who cried wolf. Hold on, Gio. They are the classic case. Hold on, Gio. Gio, hold on.
I thought that you would love that there would be less Nazis in Mariupol now than there were in 2021, Lev.
Gio, at this point, we're not talking about this, especially because all the far right parties came together. Stardust, if you don't know this is something that I'm going to lay down right now quickly, and then we're going to drop this. All the far right parties came together, and they got less than 1% of the parliament in Ukraine. So this is like the whole Nazi threat that.
Yet they control the military, Lev, but that's.
Yes.
Yeah, how interesting, right? Like, why would... Okay, anyway, you get the idea. So what I'm trying to get here is that Stardust, I don't know how much you would be able to trust a lot of these fact checkers today. So do you see why people are concerned about them wielding this kind of power with information?
Yeah, sure, but I mean, again, we're talking about somebody who's like written tons of essays on misinformation and disinformation, right? Versus like CNN, you know, just like a typical TV show looking for ratings, right? And I think that we should still like be working some way to reduce the harm to these low information citizens. I think it's not right that we are just allowing people who have no other means of checking their information, of getting their information, and making sure that it's like at least less wrong than other pieces of information. I don't think it's right that we're just like letting them kind of be free in the wind with no guidance, right?
But who are we talking about here being the guiders, being the guardians of what is true?
I'm not talking about CNN. I mean, if that's
but are we talking about are we talking about Nina Jankowicz, for example, who got appointed by the Biden administration? I saw that singing of hers. I don't know if I'm that.
I haven't seen any. I haven't seen any of the singing or whatever that is, but
here's what I did see. Just sorry to interrupt, but what I did see, the things that she was talking about, she only talks about the disinformation things that come from the right. She does not talk at all about the disinformation things that come from the other side, which is a pattern.
Sometimes they're the same, though. Sometimes the like I've seen it where the disinformation that you see on the left and on the right comes from the same place.
True, but it's not really something where a lot of the corporate, a lot of, like the CNN, a lot of that disinformation that comes out, again, Hunter Biden laptop, other things that happened during the election, those things, if they're not called out by the people that are in charge of it, I mean, it's obvious why. Why would somebody who was in bed, who is part of that establishment, criticize the establishment? I mean, that's understandable, but that goes back to the big problem here. You can't have somebody who is that embedded in this whole structure to police that structure.
So we just give up on the idea of giving people less wrong information entirely, just because we can't get 100% perfection.
Well, first of all, we shouldn't censor, but to the point of having somebody out there kind of like a Snopes, I think that there should be somebody who would be much more objective in their opinion, but they would have to be vetted to make sure they have no connection or as little connection as possible to any elements of the establishment, so there wouldn't be that kind of bias. I think that could happen, but again, they should not have the power to suppress information.
Oh, but see, this is the
Sure,
problem.
I'm not advocating for the suppression of information. I'm just advocating for at least there being a disclaimer, with medical misinfo, right? I think it's fair that there's a lot of harm that comes out of medical misinfo, and that there being a disclaimer around that kind of stuff is helpful and is providing a service to low information citizens.
Go on.
I'm a little bit skeptical about that. I think, for example, you could imagine, having some kind of an authority set up saying, well, this is what we know about medical science, and here's, what is, currently our best understanding. Part of the problem with doing something like that is that we've had that for a long time. We have, and it's produced a track record of things like the food pyramid that was released in the 90s, or recommendations about salt intake, or, the head of the FDA saying masks don't work immediately before COVID. And I basically, there are more things, and I could keep going off about this, but a lot of these fields around health in particular, and I'm using this as an example, but I think it can stand in for quite a few things. The process of generating knowledge in these fields is actually really quite bad, and I say this as a statistician. It's atrocious. These fields are built up on decades of bad studies by scholars who either deliberately misuse or shouldn't use at all because they don't understand them statistical methods. And so you can maybe go forward and have some formalized process that attempts to generate good information about health for people in these situations. But in cases where there's dispute, that there are usually cases where information is not great to start with, and you can set up some kind of an authority to push other things, but the information that they end up with is still not necessarily going to be particularly good. And I'm not trying to be completely black-pilled about this, but ultimately I'm not convinced that we're actually capable of getting a lot of good information out to people in this narrow case. And even to the extent that we are, I'm not necessarily sure the people who are that low information are going to be in a position to use it particularly well. I think the lives of people that you're discussing are maybe characterized by I don't know, I can imagine there being less volition or attention paid to these things over time than you might expect. And I definitely think that the goal of helping people in this kind of situation is admirable, but I think there's maybe less that is actually achievable than perhaps Stardust thinks. And I think some of the secondary effects of setting up these kinds of institutions are actually quite bad and noticeable. So I'm on the margin pretty negative on this.
Well, I think that the problem is that when you have institutions that are designed to quote unquote discern disinformation and true information, that itself gets slotted as another apparatus of power knowledge. That is a mechanism by which you can pretend to legitimize certain sources. I mean, Snopes is the best example of this.
Well, I want to make sure, Stardust, what do you think of Eigen's response there?
But
I think that I can definitely acknowledge that there are pieces of information that we thought was the truth, and we found out later that was incorrect, 100%. But I still think that there is value in communicating what is less wrong information, right? So, like, for example, like drinking like bleach is probably like, it's probably as advising against drinking bleach is probably like the least wrong information you can put out there regarding it, right? Like, not everything is going to be perfect, and obviously information and the facts that we have around something changes over time with like the more information we get. But I still think that there's a ton of value in providing, like, we know for sure that this piece of information is just is slightly more reliable than this other piece of information, right? Like kids don't eat Tide Pods,
You know what's funny? I just remember that one tweet that blew up of that this woman posted a picture of her 2-year-old crying because they locked the cabinet for the chemical cabinet, and she's like crying her eyes out because they didn't want kids you have to, because kids they for some reason they like they want to go and drink chemicals that look delicious, and then someone posted in the replies the Ingsoc 1984. Like, it's 1984 that you don't want to let your kids drink bleach.
But with the drinking of bleach, I want to get to Eigen, but I got a quick question for Stardust. With the drinking bleach, what was that a reference to?
No, it's just in general, like Tide Pods. Like, you would put it's normal to put like a thing saying do not eat on Tide Pods, right?
Here's why I say the bleach, because I believe there was something that happened with Trump where he said something that the media ended up taking up as meaning that drinking bleach. Similar thing that happened with Joe Rogan, where they were referring to this as a horse dewormer, even though so many people throughout the world have already provenly used this for the treatment of parasites, not for horses but for people.
I think the thing with Trump was injecting bleach, and I definitely wasn't talking about that. I'm talking about specifically like just normal consumer labels on things, right? Like, I think,
but
it's
I don't think it was
normal
injecting
to have
bleach
like
either.
normal chemicals, like on Lysol or on a bottle of bleach, or like on a bottle of Clorox, like, or like on Tide Pods. Like, hey, this is not for oral consumption, and we already have that, right?
Well, hold on a second. I know it's not MMS, what some people are saying in the chat. I don't remember, chat. What was the thing that Trump was talking about? I don't think it what has anything to do with bleach at all. Yeah, I want to find out what exactly that was. So, chat, please help me out. What was that thing Trump was referring to?
Someone in my chat is saying they've had the urge to drink fabric softener. I would highly recommend you probably don't drink fabric softener.
It looks delicious.
Not a good idea.
Wait. When you're saying your chat, are you simultaneously streaming this?
Is that okay? I didn't realize.
Oh, no, that is perfect.
Okay.
But for all the people who are on Twitch, who are listening to this right now at Stardust, we're also on Twitch. Break the Rules is on Twitch. So
by some miracle.
Yes, by some miracle. So go to twitch.tv/breaktherules. That's BREAKTH3RULES. Here is the link. So be sure to go there. I want to get the Twitch people in here. Come in here. And also youtube.com. Go to breaktherules.tv. That's going to land you on youtube.com. So breaktherules.tv. Breaktherules.tv. I'm saying it so that you have a time to write it down. All the people who are on Twitch right now, write that down. Go to breaktherules.tv and go to
the average IQ.
Oh, come on. Come on. Be nice. What are you doing? Be nice. That's horrible. That is horrible.
Anyways,
Getting back to what we were talking about here with the bleach. Even if you didn't mean it for Trump reference, there are these things that throughout the last couple of years were brought up as health warnings, but they either misconstrued or completely fabricated what the initial statement was, much like with the Joe Rogan situation with the horse dewormer.
So then that would be another case where you would put a disclaimer, right? Or something like that. I don't know.
No, but who's putting the disclaimer? That goes back to the issue that the people who are putting the disclaimers on are the ones who have an agenda.
if we're talking about bleach,
I
and
don't know if
basic
it was
level,
bleach.
Basic consumer level like warnings, right? This is regardless
Oh.
of Trump, regardless of any administration, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good policy to have do not consume orally on things like bleach and
Oh,
fabric
sure.
softener and Tide,
Right,
right?
right.
I
Sure,
think
I
it's
agree
not
with that.
it's not that mind blowing that I'm advocating for us to
No,
have
but is
some
that
sort of warning
but is
on
that
that.
what we were talking about originally though? Because
I
I
mean,
thought
brought up
someone mentioned
Tide
medication in the
pods.
chat, but we can't mention on YouTube.
yes. Well,
Yeah.
just to
Hydro,
just to
Are you
solidify
being
this.
purposely obfuscating because you think it's a good idea, or like what?
No,
What's
because
going on?
there's an algorithm. There's an algorithm issue on YouTube where if certain terms are brought up, there's problems
we're
that happen with
paranoid about
videos.
getting banned, so that's why.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just one of those things. No, but to the point that I was talking about earlier, I would 100% agree with you that we do need warning labels on products, obviously, as well as if some kids are eating Tide Pods, absolutely. My issue happens to just be when it gets political. When you have certain people that advocate for certain things, that there is like enough, like a big contingent of people who are recognized scientists and doctors who would agree, yet despite that, they're not listened to. Like that gets into the murky territory of which experts do we side with. And it's, I'm not saying it's an easy way out of this, because I understand your point, Stardust. Like, we can't just have people peddle snake oil and then have that, worse than snake oil, and have that be consumed by people. But at the same time, when we have something that, let's say, is politically, politically incorrect because of money issues, because somebody wants to make certain money on another kind of cure treatment, then what do you do? How do you make sure that's not a problem?
What I'm talking about, though, is just quite literally advocating for the information that is less wrong than another piece of information. And I don't think it has to be political, right? I think it's less wrong to say to don't drink bleach, right? To don't eat Tide Pods. I think these are less wrong things. So I think that we can say that these are like pieces of information that we can say like are, I don't know, better pieces of information, like higher quality pieces of information. I'm not talking about censoring anything. I'm very anti-censorship. I'm not talking about like suppression or anything like that. I'm just talking about warning labels, right? If it comes down to like warning labels around like articles or like on YouTube or things like that, I don't think it's like a huge deal, because you're still getting your voice out there. You're just getting a warning label on something.
Well, Eigen, what would you respond to that with? Where do you see as being the line that has to be drawn between advocating for, saying that things that are bad are bad? Like, where is that line?
Oh, I don't think any issue. I'm actually fine with bleach not being labeled. I mean, look, I'm I mean, not to be psychotically like Friedmanite, but this is a problem that's easily solved with like just standard liability law, right? Like, you could easily have a regime that says, all right, well, you can put out whatever you want if you don't put on some kind of a relevant warning label that says, here are some risks associated with using this product that, a reasonable person, that wonderful legal construct is not able to interpret correctly, then, maybe you're more liable under, some kind of commercial negligence law, right? But this is a problem that solves itself if the product doesn't actually cause any harm. Like, for example, if bleach didn't actually cause any harm, say it didn't, and you didn't have a warning label on it, then okay, maybe a person could try to sue, but good luck actually proving harm. In the case of information, I think you very quickly end up with situations where, like one, I guess what I mean to say is I think it would be very difficult to actually establish that harm was being caused by any particular piece of information that was out there, right? Like
unless it's direct. Like there was this one guy, his family, I believe the same service that Fed Alaska was using to grift, grift scam Glow. This one guy in Florida, was it Florida or was it somewhere else, that said that taking chlorine can cure cancer and all this type of stuff, and it killed so many people. and I believe he's in a
Yeah.
federal prison right now. But that's like, you know,
James Hubble, I think his name is the
Yeah,
yeah.
James
No,
Hubble,
but back to Stardust. Would you agree with Eigen on this, or do you want to push back?
Yeah, I disagree. I think that basic harm labels on specific items are pretty good. I'm not willing to like just let people like eat Tide Pods, I guess, and figure it out for themselves.
How would
So,
I mean? So okay, it doesn't seem to me that there is a massive problem with people eating Tide Pods or drinking bleach in the United States, not knowing that those things might harm them. Like, and putting a warning label on something isn't going to stop somebody from doing it, right? I don't think this is something you can really stop people from doing. And the flip side of this is that very frequently you'll get false positives. For example, in the United States, marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug, right? Like, this drug has, according to, I believe, the FDA, like, no valid uses, and it's known to be extremely dangerous, and et cetera, which is patently absurd. I say this from experience and trying, really taking heroic doses of marijuana. It is hard to use this drug in such a way that you'll hurt yourself. I mean, like, does this cause an alteration in your mental? Can I talk about this?
Sure. Yeah.
And this is kind of like the ultimate end of labeling things. Like, labels actually do have consequences for the way that things are treated, whether those are formally legal at first or whether there's something else. Like, having that kind of authority exerted over the way that a thing is perceived by people is actually, in my view, pretty potentially pernicious. And it is like sort of literally an act of authority that I think is frequently unwarranted. And the people who are putting labels on things are people with agendas of their own. Like, there's this common critique that you can't be a reporter from nowhere in media, right? Like, and that has, of course, sort of led into the modern media environment where everybody just kind of wears their biases on their sleeve. But regulators have a lot of these biases too, and a lot of these agendas. And the sort of people who put warning labels on things are the sort of people who pretty typically end up being captured by industry or by other actors after they leave. And I think these things are, like, going back to the old food pyramid. I mean, like, that was generated very heavily with input from major agricultural firms who have been putting huge money into funding research that makes their particular products, whatever they happen to be at any point in time, look good, and giving it this sort of scientific imprimatur. And I think that putting labels on things just gives people a false sense of security. Like, this information is reliable. I'm getting this from an authority. I am a smart person because I'm listening to smart people. And I mean, like, but
no, but I was going to ask you, Eigen, from your perspective, do you think that it seems it revolves around people's cognitive capacity? Do you feel that IQ is like an objective property? I mean, that's the whole debate in itself. But do you feel like it's an objective property that can be sort of the way in which people use their own inherent intelligence capacity can be somehow aided by the growth of information distribution, or is it a fixed property from which that the plebes, the people meant for garbage detail in life, they're like sort of doomed to live in like a high information, high tech world, and there's nothing we could do about it except for, I don't know, put them in forest preservations or something.
Well, wait, Gio. Before that though, Stardust just wrote here, I have an agenda that people should not drink fabric softener. So from what Eigen said right now, I want to try to see if we could find a happy medium here. Would you disagree with what Eigen said?
I mean, like, look, like, what does an agenda mean? Like, when you're talking about people putting labels on things, having an agenda, what is the agenda? Is the agenda just public safety? Like, I don't think that's a bad agenda. And what do you mean by agenda? Is this like a coordinated effort, like a bunch of people working together with some some secret mission, or is it just that we have accepted that certain things are bad for people and we want to put labels on them so people don't mistakenly consume those things, right? I think yeah, you can make the statement that that labels don't help anybody, but I think that if we took labels off of a lot of these things, we would definitely see like an increase in people calling like the poison control center. So yeah, if my agenda is to prevent more harm with like low information people, then you know what? So be it. I'm totally fine with that.
So what's like what's your political outgroup? Like imagine some political entity who you revile, and imagine them being in power for a moment. Would you want them to be generating labels for things?
I think if they're generating labels and those labels were still objectively true, that like drinking bleach is probably not good for you and eating Tide Pods is probably not good for you, I think I'd be fine with it.
Okay.
Oh,
Suppose that, I mean, like, this objectively true thing seems like sort of a problem, because I can make just about anything be objectively true if you give me enough time and enough money. Like, it's pretty easy to generate research demonstrating whatever you like. I just think that you're underestimating the ability of people to generate notions of objective truth that are really neither. It's incredibly hard to know things, and it's relatively easy to generate the illusion of knowing things.
I think we can say, though, like, given the examples that I've given, right? I'm not talking about like very partisan issues. I'm talking about things that people know for a fact based on like what we've seen, right? We've seen that when people drink bleach, the outcome is not good. So I'm not talking about partisan issues here. If you're talking about partisan issues, you know what? Sure, that like I don't know how I feel about that, but like things when it comes to drinking bleach, eating Tide Pods, drinking fabric softener, doing things that are bad for you, consuming like pesticide for no good reason, then yeah, I think that we can say that warning labels are probably objectively a good thing.
But are we actually talking about drinking bleach right now?
yeah, that's what I mean. We're sort of getting lost in the metaphor.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. If you guys are talking about like partisan issues, I would need to see an example of like what exactly we're talking about there.
I think that like we're sort of focusing on the material like bleach, arsenic, other substances that can kill you. But I think that originally we started off with, and yes, we will get back to Elon Musk and Twitter.
Yes.
Is that originally we were starting off with the realm of moderation and piecing out information on a platform like Twitter, and whether people can facilitate the ways in which people interpret that information just by saying that it's a fact checker.
Okay, so on Twitter, if you can provide me maybe an example of something that's more partisan, then sure, I'm willing
let's just
to
say the particular horse dewormer thing. That's
the horse dewormer. Yeah, like I mean, obviously, like I believe it's in like certain quantities that it's a horse dewormer, but there is like there's human consumption what's it called as well. I totally agree with you guys on that thing. But when we're talking about providing like warning labels on and those warning labels are saying things that are objectively less wrong, right? Like specifically that like consuming like rat poison is probably going to be bad for you, then I don't think that there's anything controversial in what I'm saying here.
No.
Well, Eigen, would you be able to do any pushback there? Because I think Stardust is correct, unless I'm missing something. Like, why would you dismiss that as being something that can work? Or, yeah, what do you think?
I just think that it's relatively easy to come up with alternative solutions that lead to self-labeling in efficient ways rather than having it passed out by mandate.
Interesting. Well, then I guess this is where you guys stand, but it is very interesting.
What I think Eigen means is that the nature of information itself within the world that we're in the sort of, especially in the digital world, is that we can't be certain of what I guess what would Plantinga call it, warranted true belief of something, because the sort of like the hermeneutic that goes on between people spreading information, people spreading disinformation, people hyper politicizing information is accelerated on a digital plane. Therefore, ergo, we can't really rely on a strict one-to-one, this is the truth because I'm an expert, I'm an arbiter of truth. I think what Eigen is saying is that you have to have sort of a way of going around truth that is sufficiently open enough, that is sort of arrived at through the parsing of different sources of information and so forth, that is more open-ended. But the problem is that I think, again, the average
nobody's going to do that. That's a problem. But to Eigen's point, if I understand correctly, let's say Stardust is right, and you're going to have some idiot parents that let their kid eat the toy that's inside of a Kinder Surprise, for instance.
Also, I have to ask this, Eigen, what is the in-group? I can't get my head around. What is the in-group? I can't...
It's a long story. It's sort of a joke. And yeah.
But okay, so from what I understand, Eigen, if a family does something where their kid, drinks bleach, you're saying that those sacrifices, for I don't know what you would call them, but that would be worth it in a way, just to make sure that the slippery slope of information warfare does not end up putting people in a position where they're only, where they have the government blinders on. Would that be a fair assessment, or is that a hyperbolic take?
So suppose that a parent puts their kid on a high ledge overlooking the side of a cliff, and the kid wanders off. Do you think the cliff should have been labeled?
Well, here's the difference. Okay, go on.
I think a cliff is a much more is a much more obvious indicator of danger.
Like fire, like a hot stove.
Yeah, than fire. Yeah. So I would say things like don't take too much Tylenol. Don't take too much only take this maximum amount, this amount, right, per day. I think that's fine, right? What my point is here is that we already have labels on things to prevent bad information getting out. We already have labels to make sure people are safe. And I don't see where do you draw the line, basically? If you think that that we shouldn't label things like the Kinder toy actually was an excellent example of that. How many parents would let their children just eat that because it was part of the candy, right?
Social Darwinism. Social Darwinism. That's what I say to that. Look, if a parent is so responsible that their kid eats this egg, and maybe that speaks to the kid as well. I don't know. I'm not going to judge. But there is something to the idea. Maybe this is me being too contrarian, too much of an asshole. But maybe there is something to the idea that if there are people who are going to do incredibly stupid things, let them. Let them. Or is that too evil?
That's actually not my position. My point is all right, suppose, and yeah, okay, there are warning labels on cliffs. Thank you. We have warning labels on cliffs, but suppose this one were unlabeled. Okay, so following from there, all right, a kid drinks bleach. Definitely really bad, right? So were the parents aware that bleach is not something you should drink? My guess is that most parents are aware that bleach is pretty bad, right? My guess is that most parents are aware that you shouldn't say, hit a kid in the face with a claw hammer. My guess is that most people are aware of that. A reasonable person encountering a claw hammer would not see it and think, I bet this is good to hit my kid in the face with.
Do you think that most parents know what the daily limit of Tylenol is, or what the daily limit of Advil is?
Right. So if you look at a bottle that contains Tylenol or Advil, typically there will be instructions on it, right? What I'm saying is those instructions don't need to be mandated, because if they aren't there, and somebody takes too much of it because it's not clear how to use the product. And a reasonable person isn't going to be able to just intuit the correct amount of Tylenol to take from a bottle, right? Typically you're going to need some advice about how much Tylenol a given pill contains, because it's not always obvious. Maybe it's a gel cap. Maybe there's a bunch of binder in it. Tylenol is making drugs is hard. But those things are just done and can be done relatively efficiently without having direct regulatory oversight. And if a given firm is creating a product that a reasonable person is not going to be able to intuit how to use without hurting themselves, like they're going to put a warning label on it, or they're going to be liable for any damage that's caused by their negligence. And this is like a really easy and decentralized solution that links labeling directly to expected harm relative to the cost of labeling something, and doesn't require any regulation at all. It just requires people who are hurt by something and who used it in a way that a reasonable person might use something. It requires companies to be liable for any damage caused by that. You don't need a bureaucracy for this apart from a normal court system. You just need people who are willing to read directions, perhaps, or make an informed decision, or a decision on their part to not read directions. But you don't need this sort of thing to be mandated.
Would they be liable if the damage is like long term?
Sure, if you could prove it. And I assure you, as somebody who has been sued for soft tissue, I mean, eventually the lawsuit was dropped and insurance settled. But if you get in a car accident, right, you are extremely liable for almost any damage you can cause to somebody else, even if it's completely fantastical. Soft tissue injuries, crazy. Nobody can prove that shit.
Let's say somebody is taking a medicine for a long period of time, right?
Okay.
Long-term damage from that could be hard to prove, right? So why would there be a incentive for anybody to label that if there isn't a regulatory a regulatory organization to do it?
If something objectively causes damage, it should be pretty easy to prove that the damage was caused by that thing, right? And if it's not easily proven, it's hardly objective.
No, there are a lot of things that I think will that people can consume over a long period of time that will cause them significant harm.
For example?
Yeah, if you take too much medicine over a long period of time, right? Let's say this person is not taking a whole bunch of they're not taking so much Tylenol that it's or Advil that it's hurting them that day, but it's hurting I don't know, their liver or something over a long period of time.
Okay.
What is the incentive of a company to put that warning label on that product?
Not wanting to be sued. I mean, if you're consuming the maximum dose of Tylenol every day for a decade and you end up with liver damage, I mean, one, don't do that.
Or lung cancer from smoking.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
okay,
lung cancer can be caused by a lot of different things, right? But
sure, yeah. So I mean, I think the cigarette companies were sued for this pretty aggressively, and now they put warning labels on them saying, hey, by the way, you can get cancer from doing this. So caveat emptor.
But doesn't that make Stardust right in that there is a need for these warning labels, or would you say that without the warning labels there would be a similar situation?
No, I'm just saying that companies can decide whether to put warning labels on or not based on their tolerance for being sued and the expected cost of doing so, and you don't need to have any kind of authority doing this as long as you have
what if they have a
system.
high tolerance though? If they have a high tolerance, if they have a bunch of lawyers, right, and it doesn't matter if your kid is having liver failure, I don't know, that what is the point in labeling it then? How many people have to die from something or have to have sustained harm done to them for a warning label to be on something?
I mean, it's murky calculation, right?
Wait, what is that calculation? Murky?
Yeah, it's murky. I mean,
it's
I mean, the calculation is a function of likelihood of being sued, likely damages from the lawsuit, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think
I think we strayed off topic though.
No, but this is a very interesting topic. I'm happy that Stardust, you're kind of into this particular conversation, which is why I wanted it to continue for a little bit longer. Last thing that I would say about this particular topic is when it comes to I keep calling them sacrifices, but when it comes to the damage that would be done in Eigen's case, from what I understand, you're saying that initially some people may do some damage, but then once that gets into the news, once that gets into the whole conversation, then this company ends up being sued, so it'll stop whatever problems are going on. Is that the right way of saying that? And Stardust, you would want it to be there from the get-go, so that fewer of those people would be damaged.
My basic stance on this is that I'm not comfortable trading harm. Yeah, I guess for.
Well, then the last thing that I would say, and I would ask this to Eigen as well, I think the chat over here seems like it sees a very slippery slope with the stance, even though I know that you said before, and I think you're right, that, hey, I'm not advocating for censorship, I'm just advocating for these particular labels on things that are obviously bad. If I could play devil's advocate for the chat, I would say that their concern is that line that for you may be drawn in a very particular place for somebody else in the future is going to be a little bit wishy-washy. And they may start doing things like have been done in the past when it comes to the horse dewormer conversation and so on and so forth. That is something that we still have yet to figure out. How do we prevent it? And I don't think any of us here think censorship is the way, but do you see at least like where the chat may be coming from here in that slippery slope thing? Not even about medicine, not even about warning labels, specifically about information, disinformation, and so on.
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I would just reiterate that, like, I've never been pro-censorship or pro-suppression in any way. I think that, like, warning labels are actually a happy medium for that, right? So that's what I would say in response to that. Yeah, I'm very anti-censorship. So.
Well, let's see. Worst case scenario, Eigen, regardless of your opinions here, which are differing from Stardust's, what do you see as the worst case scenario that may be incurred from these kind of warning labels if you were to draw some kind of a slippery slope situation?
Worst case scenario would be mass exchange of nuclear warheads with Russia.
Oh God.
Well, that's certainly a step up. Well, okay, anything closer. I'm not going to say worst case scenario. I'm going to say medium case scenario. You know, something a little bit more related to the warning labels.
Well, I mean, look, you know, whenever you set up some kind of regulatory regime, what ultimately is going to happen is there is going to end up being a capture of that regulatory regime by industry, and the regulatory regime is going to be used to advance the aims of people other than the people who it's, you know, putatively expected to serve. And even apart from that, you're going to see things like massive risk aversion. You're going to see, you know, labels being used as a mechanism to, you know, subvert competitors to the industry that's captured it. And you're also going to see other interest groups taking advantage of that system to advance their own ends. You know, I mean, like right now we at the FDA, we have you know, a set of labels that are applied to various drugs of different types, and they're used to promulgate, you know, the arrest of various people. Whether it happens to be, you know, it's like jazz musician who's using marijuana, or, you know, like
the war on drugs, basically.
Basically, the entire war on drugs is a matter of warning labels, right? Like, what is a drug anyway? Well, it's whatever the FDA happens to identify as a drug of a particular class. I mean, like, it has not always been like this. People used to get opium tea, and Sherlock Holmes is a famous cocaine user, right?
Well,
and, like,
according to Elon Musk. According to Elon Musk, back to him again, he wants to put the cocaine back into Coca-Cola. So there we go. We've gone full circle back to Musk. Yeah, but okay,
I mean, like, people who are for warning labels are the sort of people who would back the Qing Empire over the British. I mean, just like not having warning labels and letting people do what they want is, it's an old Anglo
Wait,
tradition.
please explain this. What do you mean by Qing Empire?
It was an opium war joke. Sorry.
Okay, no problem there. No, but Stardust, maybe you're looking at I don't know if you would say hyperbolism, although I'm kind of on Eigen's side here, of this word, regulatory regime. But do you see where he's coming from, though, with the potential dangers here? Like, at least I do. I don't know.
I can see his perspective. But I guess I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to partake in a society that's not willing to put harm reduction labels on things just for the lowest informed.
Well, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let's take it one step further. Take it one step further, and let's say you not only, like people say that a lot of times, like, oh, I know what you're saying. I feel you, dog. I feel you. No, let's take it one step further, okay, and say that could you make a case? Could you Silverman what Eigen is talking about? Silverman. You never heard of the Silvermanning? It's the opposite of straw manning.
I think it's a long stretch to say that harm reduction, these labels, warning labels.
No, forget the labels. Forget the labels. Let's throw the labels out. I know you don't want to throw the labels out, but let's throw the labels out. Let's concentrate specifically on this this war on drugs, like Eigen said before, the power that these corporations and government entities have over things that people consume. Let's just forget the warning labels and just take the worst case scenario here. So not just where he's coming from, but do you understand what possible risks may be incurred here on people in this worst case scenario? So not warning labels, but specifically let's concentrate on the worst case scenario here.
So, worst case scenario. I guess I'm trying to see
the one that Eigen outlined.
Yeah, the one with a jazz musician consuming marijuana. Dude, I guess I would have to think about that one some more, I guess. Yeah.
By the way, it's Steel Manning, not Silver Manning.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, man.
I was thinking of the Silver Surfer there for a second.
It's Steel Manning, Lev. What the hell are you talking about? Anyways, let's fucking get off this.
I invented a new concept.
Owning Twitter.
Yes, I invented a new concept,
did not
Silver
answer
Manning.
my question.
The next level is Gold Manning. Gold Manning, that is the ultimate one. Gold Manning is what happens when Chelsea Manning decides to transition to a gold statue. And like that episode of Avatar, Xavier, if you guys are a fan of Xavier, Renegade Angel, there was an episode where all the citizens pitched in to win the lottery, but then instead of using that lottery money to improve their town, they were convinced by Xavier to use it to cover themselves entirely in gold, solid gold. And then the Arabians came and, well, anyway, watch Xavier. Highly recommended series. But anyway, sorry, I stepped on you there.
No, all good. I would have to think about that more. I guess I'm just having trouble connecting these two scenarios. But yeah, I'll just have to think about it more. So.
All right. Well, for a future episode then, let us get back to the course at hand. We're going to be finishing up pretty soon, but let us go back to the situation with Elon Musk and what exactly is going to happen now. So any predictions before we drop the Musk story, any predictions for what's going to happen? Stardust in the DMs, you told me that you don't really think that there's going to be that much change. Elon did talk about there being algorithmic, a freeing of the algorithm, so to speak.
Yeah,
so,
I think transparency is always a good thing. I think transparency is a good thing. As far as are there going to be monumental changes beyond that? I don't really know. I tend to just look at businesses. Business is business, right? Hopefully he's buying it because he has some really good ideas beyond just the transparency thing. Hopefully he has a couple more ideas beyond that. He is a good businessman, so I trust him to at least have something else. But in most scenarios, I would say that I don't know if the average consumer is going to see much of a difference in the way that they use the platform.
So it's funny how the first night you had like a bunch of old right-wing accounts come back, and they like started posting like the usual stuff as you can imagine. Then they like all got banned because they're like, no, it's not. They didn't clear out the Jannies yet, so that was fun.
So, well, Eigenbot, what do you think? Is Stardust right on this? Is it just going to be like a regular business?
I don't know. I mean, assuming it even goes through, he's got months to cancel it beforehand for a relatively low cost, and he's pulled out of deals like this before. If he buys it, like I kind of expect he's going to have a good time, and everybody's going to pay even more attention to what he's saying. And how is the platform going to change? I don't know. It's hard to change the way the companies work. He might actually end up having a hard time tweaking Twitter to make it work more effectively while still making money. But at the same time, I mean, maybe he doesn't care about making money, and it does seem like Twitter is pretty suboptimally run right now by the current management. So yeah, I'm happy to just wait and find out.
There we go. So that's the end of the Elon Musk conversation. I know we mentioned the abortion. Yeah, because I want to get into the abortion situation right now. I know saving the best for last, right?
No,
Gio?
we've been going on too long.
No, well, the last thing, though, I'm just curious. So Stardust, I don't want to make a whole big thing of it out of the way. We're already kind of towards the end. Maybe this would be a cliffhanger for a potential other episode of BTR. I think Stardust, you are very lovely and wonderful, and I really appreciate you spending time in here. And shout out to all the Twitch watchers of Stardust. Subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv. That's the YouTube site, and we are on Twitch as well at twitch.tv/BreakTheRules, but with a number 3. I'm gonna post it in the chat right now. But anyway, Stardust, what is your position on abortion? Bam.
I think you can imagine live.
So I think like it's definitely like a hard decision to make. Personally, like from the studies that I've seen, there's this really good study that they did. It's called like the Turnaway Study, and it follows like 1,000 women who were turned away from getting abortions, and what that meant for their lives afterwards. And so I think based on that study, I think that it needs to be something that is available to a lot of women. Obviously, it's not like an optimal decision to make. I don't think it's something that people make easily. And even with like, I don't know, even with like late term ones, like late term abortions generally are ones that happen because of medical issues. But as like abortion in general, I do think it's something that needs to be available as a service to a lot of women. And maybe one day when we have like artificial wombs, maybe abortions won't have to result in the death of a child, right? But unfortunately, right now we don't have that. So.
Well, there is a thing with artificial wombs that I recall Gio posting. I don't know if it was Gio who posted that retweet of one of the Globe Twitter people talking about artificial wombs. Globe Twitter, from what I understand, what does Globe Twitter mean? I know Bastiat, who I really want to get on Break the Rules real soon. We're in communication right now. Oh yeah, baby. What does Globe Twitter mean? Dude, no, you're perfect for that. Okay.
Globe Twitter is like the neolibs, right?
Yeah.
Neolibs,
like,
okay.
And ironic neoliberals.
Yeah. But with the artificial womb thing, I want to get into that just a little bit. Not so much of the abortion thing, but one thing quick from Eigen. You had a very spicy thread. You have a very hot take, the conservative take for abortion. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's really simple, really quite elementary. Basically, banning abortion would devastate conservatism. Reason being, once abortion is banished, it's very likely that, like people don't make decisions in a vacuum. It's not like people couldn't respond to no longer having abortion as an option. And what seems to me to be the most likely response of women to abortion being banned is doubling down on hormonal contraceptives, right? I mean, like, if you don't want children and if you're having sex, like, assuming you want to have sex, I guess, like you want to make sure that you're not going to get pregnant. And so, I think you could see women like the number of women taking hormonal contraceptives increasing dramatically, maybe even taking double doses. Who knows? With all the misinformation out there, I mean, people do crazy things, even with labels. So one problem with this is that hormonal contraceptives have all sorts of, psychological effects on women who take them. This is understudy. There are problems with dosing of hormonal contraceptives. Whether you weigh like 90 pounds or 250 pounds, you get the same dose, and the response of your system to varying concentrations of hormones varies quite wildly. And hormones have major effects on people's moods and their behaviors and their views on life. And there's a pretty plausible story that that women might end up even leaning even more left and more toward the sorts of solutions and modes of government that have existed before. But what I think the real problem is that as large numbers of women start taking hormonal contraceptives in quantities much greater than before, a major issue is that it's going to make it more difficult for male to female transitions via ingested hormones. And this is going to devastate the right because of the trans woman, brain trust that exists and really underpins most of neo-reaction. And so, I mean, it's just going to hollow the movement out. And I think they're really in trouble.
Holy crap! Oh, you had me. That was good. That's amazing. No, well, the logical we need to ban both.
Well, no. For the first part, though, Stardust being the only birthing person on this panel, right?
I can't get over that. It's so unfortunate. A lot of NRX spaces, there happens to be. Never mind. For YouTube purposes, we will tape that. But that. Oh my god.
I know. Stardust, any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah. I guess just my thoughts are, there are a bunch of outcomes you can look at with that study. Where not only did denying this person an abortion affect their life in a negative way, it also affected their pre-existing children's lives in a negative way, and also put them and their pre-existing children and the unborn child in actually more danger. So there are a lot of things that you can look at as far as outcomes when it comes to banning abortion. Obviously, we should be putting things into place that support people so they don't need to turn to abortion. But as it is right now, it still needs to be an option that's available to women. And I think in a lot of these places where you see a lot more abortions actually is because of the lack of access to contraceptives. But overall, I'll probably be talking more about the Roe v. Wade stuff in depth in the next couple of days. It's probably going to be a huge thing over the next week in Twitch politics. So, yeah.
There we go. That's why you get the big bucks, Stardust. You know how to.
On Wednesday, I'm planning on doing a pretty big stream in depth on the history and around the outcomes around these things and things that people can do if they're concerned and stuff like that.
Everybody subscribe to Stardust. Look, we have to do the dimensional merge of the Twitch and YouTube communities. Which is why I want to bring in certain people. But anyway, this is why you guys have to subscribe to Stardust. Stardust, lovely, wonderful person. I really appreciate you being here, as well as Eigenrobot, and I love conversations like this. So to end this,
that study. The problem is that. Well, first of all, the idea that you have kids, then you have an abortion after is kind of fucked up to me. I mean, it's again, this is the consuming mother archetype. But anyways, I think the problem is that you're doing this study in a society that already has abortion. Therefore, there isn't enough time for women to correct certain behaviors to accommodate the fact that abortion is either totally outright banned or restricted. So that's what I mean. This is going to be probably a gradual process. I don't think things will radically shift. I think it's just going to accelerate the already existing trend of red states completely banning it and blue states becoming infanticide factories. But that's, says, oh, can I say that on YouTube? I'm sorry. But
Or
let's
on
say
Twitch,
that,
that's the bigger question. 'Cause
yes,
keep in
of
mind,
course.
Stardust is
But
streaming
no,
this as well.
I don't
so
think it's a huge
Yeah.
deal. Yeah.
All right.
no, but my point being is that if the problem is that you're taking already existing an environment in which abortion is legal and then denying it to them, and then that creates all sorts of problems because you don't have the integration of that, type of behavior around what is it going to be like when abortion isn't immediately accessed. And I think that you will see actual material changes, hopefully, God willing, material changes in people's behavior around reproduction if you restrict abortion. As for Eigen's point, the first point, the second point was a troll, but there is quite a lot of trans people in NRX.
I just
it's
don't know. I just don't know.
first
In this
point-
case,
Well, wait.
kind of like okay, go on.
My first point I would say that in some ways you have to tolerate, from my perspective at least, you have to tolerate a lesser evil for a greater evil. So that could be a response. Of course, when it comes, there's huge issues with hormonal birth control and the normalization of it. It's been absolutely devastating to women in a variety of ways. And there's medical information of its detriments that are purposefully hidden. It's linked to cancer and so forth because the pill is literally the nuclear bomb of human relations. It is the thing that has changed more about the nature of humanity than even the Gutenberg press in a lot of different ways. So that is why they don't want to.
I should
Go
be
ahead,
clear.
Edgar.
Yeah, in that thread that I was like, I don't know that I stuck the delivery this time, but yeah, I mean, like, in all seriousness, like the entire thread was sort of a joke, but
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, I think the supply of estrogen is probably pretty well established, and like, I'm sure it could respond pretty well to an increase in demand, but like, mostly I just wanted to make a conservative case for abortion that was more interesting. But
you mean,
I mean,
like
all
the
of that.
National Review, like the conservative case.
Yeah,
Well,
but more.
Yeah. Well, the last thing, guys, that I want to get into here, which I touched on before going to the super chats, which, by the way, need those super chats if you want me to read the super chats towards the end here. But the last thing was the artificial womb thing that Stardust mentioned. There was a thread about it, and even though Gio and I disagree quite a lot on the solutions to the problems, one problem that Gio or somebody else may have hinted at is that when we take away the ability of people to experience certain things that human beings experience, to have it just be like, clicking on the Amazon button and having a baby delivered to you, through these artificial means, how much of that would result in us losing our humanity? Not to say that I want people to undergo pain. I'm very thankful that the kind of ways that women give birth today has been, decreasing the pain, having, far less of the instances of the children dying, the mother dying. So that's all great. But the question is, how much pain and suffering do we have to take away just from everyday tasks to the point where we cease to be human beings? It's more of like a philosophical question, I guess, but Stardust, what do you think?
How much pain and suffering do we have to take away from everyday tasks to, you're saying, no longer be humans?
Yeah, exactly. How much of humanity is having to undergo certain uncomfortable things? And again, when I say that, I am not advocating at all for like pain during childbirth, but I'm just saying in general, having to do some tasks.
We've been augmenting our bodies for a long time. If you wear glasses, if you wear contacts, you already are like taking part in some form of like transhumanism, right? You're like, I wear contacts. My eyes were not, meant to see real well, I guess. But yeah, I mean, everybody is some people have heartburn, they take medication for it. So we've already like done so many things that augment our bodies. Our cell phones have almost become like an extension of us because we like use it for like every type of thinking process possible. So if you want to make this argument like about artificial wombs, like I would say that we've already been less human for a while, right? Or we're a different type of human. So I would say, I would say that we've already been. I mean, what is a hip replacement, right? Like when you get old enough, you're gonna have to get a hip replacement.
Yeah, but
Well,
I mean,
here's
a
where I
huge
could
debate in academia with prosthesis. Eigen, you probably know some of this research, but is it overcoming
As
a
a
natural?
robot.
Oh yeah, as a robot. I think the argument is it overcoming a deficiency of the body a form of transhumanism, either as an ideology or as an experiential technology that can expand the what is it in philosophy they call it, the res extenda of the self? Or is it that you were just replacing something that is already naturally there and it's aiding in the lessening of suffering of others? But then the transhumanists would argue that there is sort of like a creation of greater lessenings of suffering, to the point where if you become a purely cybernetic or cyborg being, that's a good thing, because then you're not
that's a good thing.
We already managed like the issues around childbirth, though, right? Like we've already managed like a lot of childbirth to make it like have less mortality, to have like better infant like mortality, better mother mortality, right? We've already done this. We've already done it.
But the argument is then, what is it? When is the line that we are going to distort the picture of the human subject to such a fundamental degree that it's not about alleviating suffering? It's rather the creation of very lurid artificial needs, such as, I don't know, downloading your brain into a computer, which I think is impossible. But like,
I mean, is wearing glasses like unnecessarily like reducing like hardship for yourself? Maybe like
Greeks thought so.
I mean, yeah, well, maybe, I mean, yeah, that could be your thought, or is, I don't know.
I think it comes down to human willpower. So, for example, there was, who was that philosopher, Socrates, who was talking about how it's bad that writing was invented. Because according to him, it atrophies the ability to remember things. And, back in the day, people were just telling each other stories, so they had to use their memory much more to keep track of, like, all of these different stories. So I think there is something to the idea of utilizing human willpower as opposed to having something being done for you. For example, let's say if instead of waking up on your own willpower of, oh man, I gotta get up, I gotta get the day started, you would have some kind of an exoskeleton that would open your eyes, kind of like a Wallace and Gromit contraption, where it would just like carry you around from one room into another, it would carry you into the workplace, it would think for you, it would do everything for you. And at that point, what is the point of doing anything? Either there's a reason for existence or there's no reason for existence. There can't be both. So
if you use an alarm clock, are you not like, why can't you just wake up on your own?
To an extent, it's a matter of degrees here. So I agree with you. Like, look, I'm wearing glasses. There's no way for me to say that I'm, a living embodiment right now of everything working correctly. But there are certain degrees, and I think that's kind of like what we're here for, is to kind of distinguish between what is an extreme degree and what is an allowable degree. And I think the glasses and not having the pain of childbirth, that is definitely an allowable degree. And there is something that I find from women who have undergone, the birthing of a child, that there is a very special experience there, almost like, for example, for men of certain tribal societies, they have certain ceremonies when they become a man. And they have to undergo a certain thing, and when they undergo that thing, it changes them. And the women who I've spoken to describe the actual process of having this baby, come out of you and having this connection. When you take that away and just have like an Amazon, buy button and the baby, there's something, it feels like we are robbing ourselves of something that gives us a hint that there is something more to existence than just consuming. But I don't know, that's just me.
I mean, the artificial womb, I'm not sure how it would work. I'm sure that there would probably still be some of the pregnancy that would have to be carried out like in the mother, right? And then at some point, then you would like move that, I don't know, that baby from the mother's womb to like the artificial womb, right? But I'm just proposing it as like a possible alternative to like eventually abortions, right? So abortions don't have to.
Well,
result in the death
abortions
of.
don't happen to be needed right now. If, let's say, you could have that old, leaving at the fire station, leaving the baby at the firehouse, that old trope. But the idea being that
Leaving
there
it
are
at
places,
yeah, but the state leaving you like having the state as your parent is a lot of the times like I don't know,
True.
not a good life for a lot of
No,
people.
I agree. And that
Yeah.
is also why it's kind of a shame, I think, that we don't have more organizations out there, like more, I don't know, church-based organizations, some organizations that I think would do a better job at this kind of stuff. But I don't know. But anyway, let us go to the super chats. I really appreciate Eigenrobot and Stardust for being here.
What
Unless
do you get
Gio,
Eigen's opinion on?
Oh,
on
yes.
Elamite exowombs.
That's true. Being a robot yourself, I'm sure you have some thoughts here. So before we go to super chats, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you mentioned Socrates, but maybe a better philosopher to think about in this case would be Heraclitus, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, so like this is just like the human of Theseus. Like, all right, so suppose that you replace your arm with robot imitation arm, right? And so now you're sort of a cyborg, I guess, but like you would still be identifiably human. But you just continue replacing one body part after another, and now like everything in your body is artificial. Are you still a human? I mean, like at what point do you stop being the same being, or even stop being the same human? And I mean, like, Ship of Theseus is it's complicated, and like, what do you even make of this? Like the ontology is challenging, but I think, to the extent that there's like a more and a less of being human, like you get into this question of like, what is being human even really when you think about it? And like, I don't know, it's not really clear there's an answer to me. I do think that as far as artificial wombs are concerned specifically, as someone who recently had a kid, my impression.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. She's great. Yeah, you saw her earlier.
Yeah, adorable.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd let my wife speak to this, but I mean, my impression from her being pregnant was that the pregnancy itself was actually pretty important to her, and just the way that she sort of bonded with the baby in utero, and just sort of the series of absolutely wild hormonal changes that she experienced over the course of pregnancy. And I think that was, I mean, so I think that was important. And if you're going to rely on artificial wombs, my guess is you would want to find some way of compensating for that, or mimicking it, or something in a mother, even without the pregnancy itself. But I mean, at the same time, there are a lot of people who want to have kids who are just not capable of doing so right now. And there are approaches like surrogacy that, work, and also have their own ethical issues for some people. So, I mean, like it seems like a net win, although I can also see some really creepy uses for it. I'm imagining some, I can think of ways to exploit horrible uses for these things, which, I don't really endorse, but you could imagine it. So I don't know. It's all complicated. I think like the main thing is that I think people are over-indexed on like information technology right now. And while that's pretty impressive, like all the stuff that's happening with IT right now is very impressive. Like biology is a huge sleeper. I mean, a while ago I interviewed at a company. I think they might be defunct at this point. Certainly not under an NDA. But for say embryo selection, I'm not sure how familiar people are with this, but I mean, coming up with I think direct gene editing is still out of reach, but there are approaches that you can take to identify, a given offspring, and sort of make predictions about what traits that person will have, that are very well developed and more or less approach, kind of like Gattaca levels of,
shit.
and also, incidentally, I mean, depending on your views of abortion, some of these methods involve creating absolutely breathtaking numbers of embryos, incidentally. So, like, there are still some problems with it. Like, there are certain traits that are very, where it's very hard to predict outcomes for these traits. And, I don't know how quickly that sort of a problem is going to be solved in terms of like making true designer babies. But, the future with respect to biology is really weird, and I think people are not prepared for that.
It's a brave new world.
I think
out
we need
there.
a Butlerian jihad. We need to get rid of it all. Smash it.
Geo, have some respect for the butlers. They have to do a lot of work for the rich people, and here you want a Butlerian jihad. Anyway, I love, by the way, this comment over here from Glasscake. I am transhuman because I wear cool hats. Okay, so anyway, let us go over here to... Oh, and there was a great comment. I was looking at the Twitch chat over here. A lot of wonderful people here from Stardust's camp. Everybody, by the way, from Stardust camp, subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv. Go to the YouTube channel. Help this thing grow because we are bringing everybody together. We're bringing the left. We're bringing the right. We are bringing professionals like we had 6X and Hammer 666 on with Jessica DeLoach, who worked for Pete Buttigieg. She was the assistant to his husband, and that was a dumpster fire of a stream, but it was incredible. The point is that you're never going to have these kind of interactions
We had a Chloe
anywhere
from
else.
Davos.
We did, yes, that's right, for the Great Reset conversation. So anyway, let us go to the dashboard for the super chats. And final thing, Stardust, I would love to have you back on, and there would be a very interesting stream that we could have with you and Lord Miles, who you recently did a stream about. Lord Miles has been on BTR several times, and I think that would be a very interesting conversation.
That would be interesting, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be down to come on again. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I was too combative. I'm just a combative person.
We need this. We need the combativeness. No, you know how to you know the kayfabe well. Anyway, let us go into the
Look
recent
at Ralph Mail in the
super
chat. Leave my wife Nora alone. Listen, Stardust looks way better than Nora. Okay, I can't get out of here with that shit.
All right.
All right.
Here we go. No, Stardust, you are beautiful inside and out, and there's a lot of people out there. I don't know who Nora is, but you are very well thought out.
I shouldn't tell Nora because she put up with a lot being married to the gun, so I can't.
No. What I want to say here is that Stardust, you're very smart. You're a very smart individual, and I really appreciate that you like throw back things that people say and have a nice back and forth about it. I think that's a really good quality. So anyway.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Anyway, here we go. Massive McGee, £2. Is this Sargon of Akkad? I don't remember what Massive McGee is referring to now. That was like way in the past. Croin Kicks, $2. I was radicalized by BTR. So, I mean, yeah, this is the thing. We have a lot of very online. Ding, ding, ding. I know people want me to say that word. Very online, terminally online. We have these people who are from the Twitter space who, from what I hear, a lot of the Twitch leftists are scared of. So here you get to have a meeting of the minds. You get to speak with a lot of these people, see what's on their mind. But honestly, I want more classical liberals on personally. Anyway, medium raw, $5. If Twitter is a schizophrenia simulator, 4chan is a schizophrenic hyperreality that prepared me to mock and laugh at the simulator. There we go.
That's true.
Tux loves you, $2. No chat. Thank you very much, Tux. Michael Snegursky, HRK 89.99. What is this? Let me see if this is something I should praise.
HRK is
let's see, $12.53 US. Not bad.
Oh,
I'm not gonna say anything bad about
nice.
that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
What currency is that? That's a
is it Hong Kong? I'm not exactly sure. Let me take a look at it.
HK.
That currency is Croatia. There we go. Wow, look at that, Croatia.
Nice.
All the way from Croatia. And
you mean Greater Serbia?
Oh
no! Oh, he's never given us a super chat again.
Don't start an international incident here, Gio. Eigen, I send important information about Hillary Clinton to your DMs.
It will be safe there.
Oh man.
Yes. Croin Kicks, $2. Oh, by the way, Gio, I think you have something on again. Croin Kicks, $2. Bleach just tastes so good. I gotta watch that anime, by the way. Bleach. I've been on One Piece. I know Stardust. Are you into anime? Do you like any anime?
Not really. I don't really follow that, but yeah.
All right. Well, you never know what's gonna happen in the future. Anyway, those are all the super chats. Currently,
you could lie about that, and that would go super far on Twitch. All of the little simps will be like, my favorite.
Who says I want simps? Who says I want simps? You think I'm the type of person who wants simps?
You're resisting the simp
Unbelievable.
trap. That's
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No simps
Yeah.
allowed on my channel.
No, I know, Stardust.
So
you
you're
run
not going to LARP as a perfect anime waifu. That's
No.
good on you.
Yeah. No,
Never done it,
Stardust.
never
Stardust runs a tight ship. I noticed in that stream with Lord Miles, there was somebody who was saying something she didn't like. Bam, gone. Time out. Run a tight ship. I appreciate that. That's a good leadership quality. Anyway. Those are all the super chats. I really appreciate everybody being here, everybody subscribing. One last thing. Listen, guys, if you want to see more streams like this, first of all, any plugs? Stardust, you have your Twitch. What else would you like to plug, Stardust?
I'm on YouTube. You should check it out. I split my time about 50-50 between Twitch and YouTube, so come check me out. Thanks.
Come check Stardust out. And also on YouTube, from what I understand, you take the clips from Twitch. Twitch is kind of your mothership. You take the clips from Twitch and you put them on YouTube, kind of like the best of. Would that be the right assessment there? Like
sometimes I do that. Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see. Maybe that's something BTR could try out for someone's. But anyway, I post the link over here. This is the YouTube link in the chat. That's going to take you to Stardust's channel, as well as follow Stardust on Twitter as well. And that is twitter.com/tweets from Star. For all the audio listeners right now, I got to spell it out because BTR is everywhere. We are on Twitch. We are on DLive. We are on, Odyssey. So as well as the audio platforms, we are on Apple. We're on Spotify. Everywhere. That's the key. We got to get out there. Anyway, so be sure to follow Stardust on Twitter as well. Here is that link. And hold on, Gio. Soon. Patreon. Any Patreons for you, Stardust?
No Patreons, no.
All
Just,
right.
YouTube and Twitch. Thank you.
All right, YouTube and Twitch. Eigenbot. Don't worry, Gio. We're going to get to you. Eigenbot. What would you like to promote, brother?
I don't actually sell anything online, so I'm gonna promote Will and Ariel Durant's Story of Civilization. 11-volume history of civilization. Fantastic. Check it out.
Nice. And also be sure to
You have a
follow
Substack, right?
follow Eigenbot's Substack at Eigenbot. EIGENROBOT.substack.com. So be sure to
I
follow.
forgot about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
Yeah. So here you
Follow
go.
me on Substack as well.
That's right. Follow Gio on Substack. What is the Substack address for you, Gio?
Is it Giant Productions or is it Gio's Content? Gio's Content Corner. But also follow my Twitter, Giant Productions. Tomorrow, maiden episode of Content Minded podcast with King Salmonfish is my first guest. So that'll be great.
That's
We
right.
talked about it's total schizo stream. No, it's great. I love King Salmonfish. So there you go. Go to my YouTube channel,
There we go.
Giant Productions.
And also follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/LevPo, LEVPO. I'm going to be posting more art. I'm going to be posting more weird dreams that I have. And I am going to change reality by bringing these amazing people together through the process of BTR. This is the alchemical transformation that is happening right now. Anyway, I think this is all except for patreon.com/breaktherules. So listen, if you guys enjoy the show, be sure to become a patron at patreon.com/breaktherules. A lot of good stuff is going to be in it for you if you join. First of all, for the $5 patrons, you are going to have access to the Patreon-only streams that are going to be done. You are going to have access to a special privilege in the Discord. Speaking of which, hey, I know all the Twitch people love Discord, so here is the Discord link for Break the Rules. That's right, I am opening the floodgates because, you know what? I love Stardust's audience. I could already tell it is going to be a great bunch of people who are going to be joining Discord and making the dimensional merge happen. Here is the Discord link. I just posted it in the chat right now. So be sure to join that. And for the $15 patrons, no, what am I talking about? For $20 patrons, you're going to get very beautiful woodcrafts created by my father, Alexander Polyakov. These are high quality. These are not your average woodcrafts. These are high quality works made out of high quality material. And these are magnets to be specific. So if you are a fan of refrigerator magnets but think like most magnets are cheap, check these babies out. Here, I'm going to I'm going to make this big on the screen. Stardust, I wish you could see it. It is on the screen right here, though, so the people could see it who are watching. And for $30, you are going to get a beautiful print from Giovanni Pennacchietti from the TFW No GF series. Here, you could see it in action. Ignore the Patreon link. That's the old Patreon link. But you can see it in action over here. And for $50, you are going to get all of the above, except that the wood carvings are going to be custom. So if you want a wooden magnet that is a custom wooden magnet, now is going to be your chance when you become a $50 patron. Yeah, I really wish Stardust you could see one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been looking at the.
All right, nice.
You'll also get a poster print of any
That's
episode headline. You will get another painting by me in Bob Ross style, smaller painting. You will get it was the Warhammer.
Yeah, they're still on. They're still on.
Warhammer 40K figure painted by our friend Jules P. Hamilton. And what else is there for the $50? I forget. Yeah.
Our eternal undying love. And last thing, just so you know, though, you have to be a patron for about half a year in order to get the wood stuff. All right, I just want to say that out loud because I don't want it to be a matter of like, oh, patron for like a day, and then, yeah, you get the idea. So anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching. Stardust, Eigenrobot, really enjoyed this. I will keep you abreast of what is happening for next for a Thursday, because usually Break the Rules streams every Tuesday and Thursday, but I have to get a confirmation. Let me check the email if I got a confirmation. But anyway, we are then going to have a couple of people who I can announce. We are going to have Chud Logic coming in, and that is going to be versus Tyler Hamilton, and is going to be talking about like the post-liberal political philosophy of Tyler's.
What is Chud Logic? What does he do? Chud, I love that name, Chud Logic.
Stardust, can you?
I love Chud Logic. He is a great guy. He pretty much does political content on Twitch. Pretty much a lot of commentary. He's more of like a commentary guy, I would say.
And
so
how does he lean politically? Or?
He's further left than I am. I believe he's a Marxist. So.
Oh, but is he like a Haas Marxist or like a?
No, he's not like a Haas Marxist. He's like I don't know how to describe him. I don't know what I have no idea. I just know that he's a Marxist. So, yeah.
That'll
he's a cool
be
guy,
great.
though.
So, and then we have Thursday, June 2, Alexander Bard meets Luke Smith. I know a lot of people are excited about that, so be sure to check that one out. So, and
they're going to talk past each other. That's good.
And a couple of other things that I'm not going to announce yet, but you guys are going to see. So there we go. This is the end of the stream. I really appreciate everybody watching. Once again, be sure to add the subscription right now. Subscribe to BreakTheRules.tv. Much love for Stardust's audience. And that's it. Thank you guys so much. I'm ending it right now. Have a good day.
God bless.
Peace.
Have a good one.
Goodbye. Take care.